Welcome to the fantasy audiobook, Cultivation Family, starting by taking a concubine and practicing the Sun and Moon Sutra. Chapter 61. The middle-aged man frowned, and when he met Qi Yunshao's evil eyes, he hesitated for a moment and nodded slightly. Forget it, this matter is also a slap in the face of my Qi family. I will help you deal with it. However, you cannot enter the White Scale Lake. No matter whether the Shanghai sect really exists or not, I cannot take this risk with you. Then the conversation changed and he continued. However, killing the Zhou family's little beast can also achieve the goal. This person lives in Balin Lake and has a grudge against you. This matter is most likely to be related to him. It just so happens. Learn about what happened that day and the situation about Shanghai sect through him. Seeing that the middle-aged man agreed, Qi Yunshao's face showed a look of joy, and his eyes became a bit more sinister. Hehehehe, Zhou Daocheng of the Zhou family, let's see where you are going this time. And the little girl next to him is said to be a genius with 2 spiritual roots. She just married into the Zhou family not long ago. It is really a waste to let this little beast enjoy it. If you can snatch it away, hehehehe. Third uncle, you have to save her life. The middle-aged man looked indifferent and said thoughtfully, a girl with 2 spiritual roots. There is still some value. Take it back and tame it with the soul-binding pill. Maybe it can be used by my family. Don't worry, I will keep it. Her life. Zhou Daocheng and the 4 of them moved forward. After several trips, they were already very familiar with the road to Baihifang City. Especially Lin Yuan and Meng Yushan, as casual cultivators who have been here all year round, are very aware of the distribution of nearby monsters and also know some hidden paths, which can save them a lot of trouble. This time we went to Baihifang City, time was relatively tight, so we went very quickly. Sir, it's already dark. In front of you is Red Leaf Ridge. There are few monsters around. We can rest here for the night. Zhou Daocheng nodded and said, okay, you can make arrangements. At this time, Lin Yuan suddenly frowned and said, do you have any strange feeling? I always feel that there is someone behind me. There's someone behind you. Why didn't I feel it? Meng Yushan touched his head and looked at Lin Yuan strangely. Lin Yuan was also a little unsure, maybe I feel wrong. I haven't had a good rest recently. Ha ha ha, are you tossing and turning at night, burning with desire? You are missing Lan Lan. Go away, you old bachelor. Oh, Zhou Daocheng looked at the 2 of them and felt disdainful in his heart. How could such a worldly mind and such messy desires go a long way in cultivation? The road to cultivating immortality requires steel-like will and courage. Only by enduring thousands of years of boring practice can you achieve enlightenment and become an immortal. If you are addicted to women, miss worldly desires, and have your mind corroded by beauty, then the road is over. Zhou Daocheng shook his head regretfully. If these 2 people could not have a pure heart like himself, they would definitely not be able to go far in the future. At this moment, Zhao Yunji suddenly frowned and said in a cold voice, Daocheng, I also have some bad premonitions. You and I can take care of each other tonight. Zhou Daocheng's eyes lit up and he immediately threw his iron will out of his mind. He grinned and said, okay, I'm sure you'll be satisfied. Zhao Yunji. Everyone is already very familiar with this series of steps for spending the night in the wild, skillfully finding caves, collecting dry wood to light a bonfire, and finding edible monsters. Everyone was working, only Zhou Daocheng stood aside, stretched out, and carefully looked at the surrounding environment. A large number of red maple trees grow here, and the ground is covered with red fallen leaves. The scenery is beautiful. I couldn't help but sigh. The environment here is beautiful, how can it be dangerous? I think you are still too vigilant, work more and relax. Zhao Yunji frowned, don't be careless when you go out. Okay Aunt Yunji, I've checked it carefully. If there is any danger, I will warn you. Zhao Yunji shook her head helplessly. Zhou Daocheng was sometimes mature and sometimes childish, which gave her an unpredictable feeling. Only Meng Yushan and Lin Yuan were thoughtful and glanced meaningfully at Zhou Daocheng's back. Although Zhou Daocheng never revealed his skills to them, the 2 of them had more or less informed them after being in contact for a long time. Thick, vast, solid, and endless. This is a pure earth attribute technique, and its quality is so terrifying that even the 9th level of Qi refining cannot see through his strength. As for the characteristics of the Earth Attribute technique, in addition to being extremely defensive and durable, it is also very sensitive to the surrounding environment. What's more, Zhou Daocheng is also an array master, and his sensitivity to terrain and environment is definitely no worse than theirs. Since others can sense the abnormalities around them, Zhou Daocheng must know more clearly, and can even discover many situations that others did not notice, but he did not say. Meng Yushan and Lin Yuan looked at each other, then walked to Zhou Daocheng calmly, and asked cryptically, "Sir, have you discovered anything unusual? Do you want me to check it out?" Zhou Daocheng still had a smile on his face and lowered his voice. "It's okay, I'll handle it. Don't sleep too much at night." Hearing this, Meng Yushan strengthened his thoughts. After nodding, he said nothing more and continued to prepare for accommodation, but he was just a little more vigilant. The dark forest. Qi Yunxiao frowned and asked in a low voice, "What are they whispering about? Have they discovered us?" The middle-aged man stood with his hands behind his back, and said in a steady tone, "The gap between the 8th and 9th levels of Qi refining is greater than you think. I, your third uncle, will personally lead you on the road, so don't worry." "When do we start?" "Wait until late at night. They are not strong, but there are many of them. We must make sure that they are killed with one blow." "Okay, then wait until late at night." The bonfire crackled, and the legendary flames were reflected in the deep darkness. Zhou Daocheng had already lain down early, with a peaceful look, and he smacked his lips from time to time. Zhao Yunji looked at this scene and felt helpless. It was the most dangerous to spend the night in the wild. Most cultivators would sit cross-legged to practice, or close their eyes to rest. How could they really fall asleep? She didn't know whether Zhou Daocheng was really heartless or he was absolutely confident in his two subordinates who had conquered him with his domineering spirit. No matter which one it was, Zhao Yunji still chose to sit cross-legged to the side and practice to spend the night. As the night deepened, the bright moon hung above the treetops, and the roars of wild animals rose and fell, sounding deep and low in the dense forest. The charred charcoal made a crisp sound, and after burning most of its energy, the flames of the campfire were no longer hot, and the light was much dimmer. In the dead silence, the shoes rubbed against the grass, making a faint rustling sound, hidden in the night and not attracting attention. The power of the 9th level of Qi refining tightly wrapped the aura around him, even completely covering his breathing, leaving no trace of aura fluctuation. Like the gaze of a poisonous snake, in the night as thick as water, a trace of cold light flashed, accompanied by the sharp edge of a sharp blade. Swish! The power gathered at one point, the cold light swept past, and the terrifying and condensed power burst out instantly. Zhao Yunji, who was practicing with her eyes closed, opened her eyes immediately when she sensed the energy, and habitually touched the magic weapon. But in just a moment, she felt that her heart was grabbed by a giant hand, and she was suppressed by the powerful breath and had difficulty breathing. The gap between the 9th level of Qi refining and the 7th level of Qi refining is far greater than imagined. Whether it is momentum, strength of force, or reaction speed, they are not on the same level. Zhao Yunji's pupils contracted, and she saw that the magic weapon was stabbing, and it was almost impossible to avoid it. At the critical moment, Zhao Yunji gritted her teeth and tried her best to grab Zhou Daocheng's hair, trying to make a final struggle. Then the next moment, Zhou Daocheng's eyes opened instantly. His clear eyes were free of any sleepiness, as cold as a cold pond, reflecting the edge of the sharp blade. With a loud bang, a metal thorn vine attacked like a python, blocking the two wheels in an instant with its unparalleled momentum, blocking the momentum of the long sword attack, and flying to the other side. At the same time, Zhou Daocheng clapped his hands on the ground, and the mysterious array pattern on the ground emerged in an instant, and a complete array was constructed, with rich spiritual energy overflowing. The ground cracked, the earth and rocks flew across, and two thick thorn vines broke out of the ground, wrapped in the light of the golden spear, and rushed straight to the sky. Like a swimming giant snake, it coiled in front of Zhou Daocheng and completely protected him. Although the attack was very powerful, it instantly broke through the golden spear on the outer layer of the thorn vine, causing huge damage, but it could not completely cut it and hurt Zhou Daocheng behind the thorn. Moreover, there was not just one thorny vine, but three. "What is this?" A tall middle-aged man cried out in fear, his long sword in his hand trembling constantly, his eyes full of shock. He looked up at the huge thorny vine in front of him, took a step back in disbelief, and then looked at Zhou Daocheng and others on the ground with an ugly face. At this time, Meng Yushan and Lin Yuan had also opened their eyes quickly, holding magic weapons and standing in front of Zhou Daocheng, and the aura of the 8th level of qi refining was like a wall blocking the front. The two did not fall asleep, and were even alert at all times. The magic weapons and mana were always ready to be mobilized. Even without the formation, with the speed of the two of them, they could instantly pull Zhou Daocheng away. Zhao Yunji sat there in a daze. Her hair was a little messy, but she soon reacted and stood up alertly. Zhou Daocheng's pupils were bright, and a yellowish-brown light appeared under his clothes, completely wrapping himself. It was to resist possible dangers at all times. Of course, another reason was to prevent his thick hair from being pulled out. Aunt Yunji, you can let go of my hair. I'm strong enough and don't need to be bald. A calm voice sounded. Although Zhao Yunji didn't understand, she quickly let go of her hand. The pulled hair was already shaky, which showed how strong it was. Rubbing his head, Zhou Daocheng stood up calmly, patted the dust on his body, and said in a cold voice, "Who are you? Why do you want to kill me?" After realizing the opponent's strength, Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but take a breath. Such a heavy breath, the strength is not weaker than the Wu Earth magic power in his body. This is definitely a strong man who has 90% of qi refining. It is equivalent to the existence of the family elders, and each of them is a person who can be on the stage. Zhou Daocheng was secretly shocked. Fortunately, he was prepared. Otherwise, if he was really stabbed by the opponent, it would be more likely to be dangerous. The middle-aged man looked at the scene in front of him. His face was uncertain, and after a simple analysis of the situation, he had already thought of retreating. After just one attack, he knew that the other party was well prepared. Moreover, the two 8th level qi refining people, plus the powerful formation that could resist the 9th level qi refining attack, greatly reduced the success rate of this sneak attack. What made him even more embarrassed was that he vaguely sensed that the young man lying flat on the ground was filled with an extremely strong spiritual fluctuation. Even this 9th level qi refining strongman felt that he was as hard as a steel plate, and his strength was not weaker than his own. Seeing that the other party did not answer, Zhou Daocheng was thoughtful and speculated, "I have always been law-abiding and upright. I have never done evil and have not provoked many enemies. Are you from the Qi family?" The middle-aged man's pupils contracted, but his psychological quality was extremely strong. He was not disturbed by Zhou Daocheng, but was thinking about what to do next. Continue to fight, or leave. Before he made a decision, he heard the sound of a sharp blade coming out of its sheath behind him. The sharp long knife chopped instantly, and attacked in an extremely tricky way at an angle that no one expected, breaking through the obstruction of thorny vines in an instant and attacking Zhou Daocheng's younger generation. Even though Zhou Daocheng was fully prepared, he was also shocked by this attack. He didn't expect that there was a person hiding behind him. He couldn't help but secretly fear in his heart, if he pierces the defense, I will definitely be seriously injured. At such a critical moment, there was only a ding sound. It's a pity, the person coming couldn't pierce the defense. The long knife stabbed on the back of the heart, making a crisp sound, and the thick Wu Earth spiritual qi blocked it steadily, without even touching the clothes. Zhou Daocheng smacked his lips and patted his chest, thinking that it was a close call. Fortunately, his defense was strong enough, otherwise his clothes would have been pierced. This was his favorite purple robe, which made him look the most handsome and hot. He would be very distressed if it was damaged. He turned his head and blinked at Qi Yunxiao, revealing a smile and said, "Long time no see, Brother Qi, I guessed it was you." Qi Yunxiao looked like he had seen a ghost. Both of them were Qi refining level 7 strongmen, and he was at the peak of Qi refining level 7. The powerful attack did not even pierce this person's defense. Impossible, impossible, absolutely impossible, you are definitely not at the Qi refining level 7. Qi Yunxiao retreated again and again. Zhou Daocheng was about to take action to get rid of him directly, but he keenly sensed the danger behind him. The middle-aged man's attack had come again, and Zhou Daocheng had to immediately control the formation to defend. Qi Yunxiao was weak, so he could still treat him as a joke and take a blow from him, but facing the middle-aged man who had reached the 9th level of qi refining, he did not dare to be careless. Even with the formation and his own Wu-Tu magic power that was comparable to that of the 9th level of Qi refining, he could not guarantee that he could kill the other party. Zhou Daocheng began to fully control the formation. Under his control, the 3 thorny vines were directly entangled together and twisted into a larger vine, like a wall blocking in front, protecting Zhou Daocheng and the other 4 behind. The first level superior longsword was powerful, and with the full force of the 9th level Qi refining strongman, it actually cut off 1. 3 directly, splitting the entire vine into a huge hole. The reason why it did not break completely was not because the vine was hard enough, but because it was so large that it could not be cut by a sword. Zhou Daocheng frowned. With the golden vine formation, he might be able to deal with the 8th level of Qi refining, but he was a little powerless against the 9th level of Qi refining. After only 2 exchanges, he felt a huge pressure. The middle-aged man also looked grim. According to his original plan, he would have directly eliminated Zhou Daocheng in the first sneak attack. But he never thought that the other party was already prepared. This made his long-prepared sneak attack useless, which led to the current situation. Although any one of the opponents was not his opponent, the joint battle was indeed difficult for him. After Zhou Daocheng blocked a blow, he immediately reacted and knew that defense was not a wise move, so he quickly turned from defense to offense. The 3 thorny vines spread out again, and from different angles, they continuously whipped the middle-aged man, and the offensive was continuous, like layers of huge waves. The attack intensity of the golden vine formation was not low, and the middle-aged man needed to spend a lot of energy to resist it, and stop the offensive instantly. Behind Zhou Daocheng, Meng Yushan and the other 2 were not idle either, and they had already fought with the recovered Qi Yunxiao. As the young master of the Qi family, Qi Yunxiao had received the best training since he was a child and had the most abundant resources, so his combat power was very strong. He could use the first-grade top-grade magic tools freely, and with the tricky talismans, he showed extremely strong strength. Moreover, the Qi family was known for its elixirs, and the elixirs he carried were of various types and large quantities, enough to support Qi Yunxiao's long-term battle. Zhou Daocheng was secretly anxious in his heart. This battle was not suitable for delaying for too long. Once his mana was exhausted and he could no longer use the formation, he would have no power to fight back later. At the same time, he was also looking for an opportunity to use the gold split formation, but the use of the gold split formation required timing. Only when it was used at the right time and place could it achieve the greatest effect. Moreover, when the Qi family and the spirit snake sect fought for the mineral veins, they had long been pitted by the terrifying formation of the gold split formation. If I take it out rashly, it will not only fail to work, but it is also likely to attract the attention of the middle-aged man, so he will prepare in advance. Zhou Daocheng thought about the battle situation, skillfully manipulated the thorny vines, stared at the middle-aged man who was constantly turning and moving, and asked in a cold voice. Now that things have come to this, why don't you tell me why you want to kill me? Is it just because I have a grudge with Qi Yunxiao? The middle-aged man dodged the vines and stood steadily on the ground. Do I need a reason to kill you? My Qi family cultivator died near Balin Lake. Do you think you can escape suspicion? There is no grudge between our 2 families. Do you think I would take the initiative to cause this trouble? Zhou Daocheng frowned and asked back. The middle-aged man said coldly, so what if you didn't participate? You let my Qi family cultivators be killed without helping. It's not too much to kill you today. Okay, your Qi family is really so arrogant, killing whoever they want. It really opened my eyes. Zhou Daocheng laughed in anger. He had been careful enough in his actions, but he never thought that the Qi family was still unreasonable and came thousands of miles to attack him without any evidence. This made him more determined. Fortunately, he took the initiative to cooperate with the Spirit Snake sect to help them win the rob of the mineral vein. Otherwise, if the Qi family occupied the mineral vein, Balin Lake would definitely not be at peace in the future. At this moment, Qi Yunxiao suddenly shouted loudly, Uncle San, don't listen to his sweet talk, Uncle 16's death is definitely related to him. This boy is extremely skilled in controlling the formation, and with the strength of the 7th level of Qi refining, he can deal with you, a strong man of the 9th level of Qi refining. With such a strong control ability, this person is definitely a formation master. And the sudden possession of the formation by the Spirit Snake sect has many doubts. Now it seems that it is very likely related to this person. And this so-called Shanghai sect, maybe it is also a trick created by this person. After the voice fell, the middle-aged man's face showed something thoughtful, and he looked at the formation controlled by Zhou Daocheng with a scrutinizing gaze. He seemed to understand something and said with a little surprise, "So that's it, no wonder the formation is so strong, you are actually a formation master." Zhou Daocheng was secretly shocked, and his gloomy eyes had a hint of murderous intent. Qi Yunxiao's brain is really good, and he actually guessed the whole story just by relying on clues. Originally, Zhou Daocheng was still thinking of escaping if he could, but at this moment, he had changed his mind. A cold voice echoed in the darkness. "Meng Yushan, Lin Yuan, don't hold back, kill him. The two men in front of him must not be let go, otherwise there will be endless troubles." After receiving Zhou Daocheng's order, Meng Yushan also made a full-scale attack. No matter how strong Qi Yunxiao is, he is only at the 7th level of Qi refining, and he is not as good as Meng Yushan and Lin Yuan together. Before, the reason why the two sides were able to deal with each other for so long was that they were worried that killing Qi Yunxiao rashly would lead to a desperate counterattack from the middle-aged man, so they did not dare to act ruthlessly. But now, if the two were allowed to leave, all the secrets they had hidden would be made public. Kill the Qi family cultivator. Possess the inheritance of the formation. The true identity of the Shanghai sect. There is even a powerful technique of his own. Every secret is a major weight, leaving Zhou Daocheng with no reason to retreat. Meng Yushan and the other man looked at each other, knowing that the situation was serious. Their eyes instantly became sharp, the spiritual energy around them surged, and the magic weapons in their hands no longer showed any mercy. With the cooperation of each other, their combat power soared. In just a few breaths, a huge gash was cut on Qi Yunxiao's chest. Qi Yunxiao's eyes were bloodshot and he shouted with all his strength, "Third uncle." The middle-aged man noticed the situation and knew that his opponent was really murderous, so he no longer hesitated and said coldly, "Boy, has Yun Xiao exposed you? It seems that I really have a lot of secrets in you. Ha ha, you'd better think about how to survive. Ha 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 ha." The young man laughed and said disdainfully, "You really think I can't do anything with this formation? You should die." The rich spiritual energy from the 9th level of Qi refining exploded in an instant, and the middle-aged man rushed towards Zhou Daocheng as fast as lightning. HMPH, the thorn formation is indeed troublesome, but the size is too large. You do have an advantage in long-range combat, but if I let you get close, do you still have room to control the vines? Zhou Daocheng's expression changed slightly. The middle-aged man was indeed experienced and found the weakness of the Golden Jade vine formation in a short period of time. Golden Jade vine formation for long-range combat, it can take advantage of the length of the thorn vines to greatly enhance the attack power. Even when fighting against a strong person at the 9th level of Qi refining, he will not be at a disadvantage. However, once the enemy breaks through the peripheral offensive and approaches the center of the formation, most of the attack methods will be useless. After all, he couldn't control the thorn vines to attack himself. Especially when there is a big difference in strength between the enemy and the enemy. Once the enemy gets close, you are only qualified to be beaten passively, which is tantamount to trapping yourself in a prison. In a few breaths, Zhou Daocheng's situation seemed to become precarious. In Zhou Daocheng's wide-open pupils, the middle-aged man avoided the attack of the vines at a terrifying speed and quickly approached with cunning movements. This scene made Meng Yushan, Zhao Yunji and others behind them feel their hearts tightening in an instant. Zhou Daocheng, get out of the way. Young master, don't fight him forcefully. Get out of the formation quickly. Go back and help, the adults are going to be killed. Quote. You know you're anxious now. It's too late. The middle-aged man did not just rely on speed. He stepped on a strange magic technique and burst out beyond the limit of speed in a short period of time, which was almost comparable to half-step foundation building. With just one breath, he rushed in front of Zhou Daocheng from dozens of feet away, and before anyone could react, he slashed with a fierce knife. The blade is wrapped in fire attribute aura, reflecting a bright red light, and the fluctuations in the aura are frightening. It is also not an ordinary sword, but a first-level high-grade spell inherited by the Qi family, the flame-breaking sword. Spells are extremely precious in the world of immortality, especially powerful spells, which can exert 200% of their power and are no less valuable than magical weapons, talismans, and formations. The power displayed by the sword of the middle-aged man in front of him reached the late stage of the 9th level of chi refining. Just the heat wave that escaped made Zhao Yunji and others break out in cold sweat. Zhou Daocheng tried his best to pull back a thorn vine and blocked it in front of him in an attempt to stop him. But facing a full blow from the 9th level of chi refining, it was nothing more than a mantis trying to block the car. In the horrified eyes of everyone, the flames accompanied by blazing light burned the Jin Jie on the outer layer of the thorn vines, directly melting them into molten iron and emitting wisps of black smoke. The next moment, a violent explosion sounded. The earth shook and the mountains shook. Huge firelight was mixed with thick black smoke. A large amount of dust rose from the ground. The violent collision of mana completely submerged the battle situation. Meng Yushin tried to attack the formation, but was blown away by the powerful spiritual energy fluctuations and flew dozens of meters backwards. A mouthful of blood spilled from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were filled with fear. Lin Yuan was not much better and almost fell to the ground. They are all controlled by spiritual mysteries. Once Zhou Daocheng dies, their spirits will also be wiped out. One will prosper and the other will suffer. Looking at the flames in front of them, they seemed to see their own ending. Zhao Yunji was even more ambitious than capable. As the weakest being in the field, except for being useful when besieging Qi Yunxiao, he could not participate in other people's battles. Seeing Zhou Daocheng being drowned in the fire, Zhao Yunji's pupils suddenly became dazed. Although the two got married first and then fell in love, and it was arranged by their parents and the marriage was a family union, they were their Taoist couples after all. Along with the scorching firelight, the world seemed to be still, leaving only Qi Yunxiao's wanton laughter. Ha ha ha, with this kind of strength, you dare to be arrogant in front of my Qi family. Do you think that with a few formations, no one can be your opponent? In the end, you just become a stepping stone for me, Qi Yunxiao. Your white scale lake spiritual veins are mine. Your formation inheritance is mine. Your woman is mine too. Ha 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 ha. Qi Yunxiao looked at Zhao Yunji teasingly, and his lewd laughter became more and more shrill. Tisk, 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 Zhao Yunji of the Zhao family, a genius with dual spiritual roots, is indeed the source of trouble for the Foundation establishment family. It's really wonderful. I wonder if selling you to Baihu a house will cause the young masters of the family to fight for it. Quote. However, at this moment, a calm voice came from the smoke. I would like to ask, is your young master of the Qi family's brain a little atrophied? Everyone's pupils changed dramatically in an instant, and before they could react, they heard the violent sound of a huge object breaking through the ground, and then a thorny vine rose from the ground. Zhou Daocheng was surrounded by an earthy aura, standing on the top of the thorn vines, and instantly rushed dozens of meters into the air. An indifferent voice echoed. Since you know that I am a formation master, why do you still think so naively that you can easily get close to me in my formation? The sound fell, and in the formation where the smoke rose, the splitting gold formation moved quickly. Under the blazing flames, a new formation pattern began to emerge, becoming more and more obvious. The middle-aged man's face was ugly, and he felt that the pattern in front of him seemed familiar. When the formation fully appeared and the golden red blade appeared in the air, shining slightly, the middle-aged man lost his composure. Is this the mysterious formation of the spirit snake sect? You fools, you are really colluding in secret. Zhou Daocheng smiled and said in a calm tone, didn't you already guess it a long time ago? Why are you still so surprised? Didn't you prepare in advance? I wonder if your Mr. Qi guessed it based on details and evidence, or just based on imagination. But it doesn't matter, since you know my secret, just keep it all. The voice became more and more indifferent, until at the last sentence, it became extremely sonorous and powerful, like a judge of a mortal person. There is no need to take the initiative to touch the gold-red sharp blade in the splitting gold array. Zhou Daocheng's thoughts moved and his power was concentrated in it. In an instant, the first sharp blade exploded, and the explosion resounded through the sky. The auras of metal and fire were intertwined, colliding and impacting each other. The power of flames and gold collided with the middle-aged man. This is just the beginning. After flying, the second one, the third one, the fourth one. Once the cracking gold formation started, the continuous explosions could not be controlled at all. Even Zhou Daocheng could not control this power and could only allow all the energy to be used up before withdrawing the formation. Moreover, after the first use, Zhou Daocheng discovered a serious problem. That is, the array plate of the splitting gold array that had been used once was slightly damaged. This was not an accident, but because the power of the splitting gold array was too strong, which directly damaged the array plate itself. This means that the splitting gold array can be used far less times than ordinary arrays, and it may be completely broken after 3 or 4 uses. For example, the array plate of the Spirit Snake sect was completely destroyed when the Qi family's 9th level Qi training cultivator was surrounded and killed. However, even so, it cannot cover up the terrifying effect of the split gold array. Zhou Daocheng stood on the top of the thorny vines, and jumped down immediately when the splitting gold array erupted, away from the range of the split gold array. From the beginning to the end, he arranged the splitting gold array under his feet. This was an extremely risky and bold choice, but the effect was surprisingly good. Of course, this choice was also based on many considerations. Compared with outsiders, as the owner of the array, how could he not know the weaknesses of his own array? But the best way to deal with weaknesses is not to hide or avoid them, but to correctly understand and use them. This is my weakness, and isn't it also a trap I set myself? Witnessing the flames that were more terrifying than the flame-breaking blade, Zhou Daocheng added more fuel to the fire, controlling 3 thorny vines to pull them towards the center of the explosion, and surrounding them like a city wall to prevent the enemy from escaping. This approach would actually increase his losses again. After all, within the range of the gold-breaking formation, the golden vine formation would also be affected by more violent attacks, and there was a high probability that it would be directly destroyed in the end. But Zhou Daocheng could accept such losses. He must ensure that after this attack, the middle-aged man at the 9th level of Qi refining would be killed, or at least severely injured and unable to resist. The continuous attacks of the gold-breaking formation lasted for more than a dozen breaths, and the entire formation range was completely filled with blazing flames, and the surrounding trees, ground, soil and rocks were melted. When the energy of the formation was completely consumed and the movement slowed down, there was silence on the scene. Zhou Daocheng, Meng Yushan, and Lin Yuan saw the gold-splitting formation for the second time, but they were still extremely shocked. Their hearts could not help but beat violently, and they retreated under control. Qi Yunxiao was also completely stunned, staring at this scene with a dull look. Just as Zhou Daocheng said, he guessed that Zhou Daocheng killed the Qi family cultivators, and guessed that Zhou Daocheng was related to the Shanhai sect, and even guessed about the formation. But everything was just speculation. He never expected that Zhou Daocheng actually had a set of gold-splitting formation, and even boldly arranged it under his feet as a trap to lure the enemy into the field, and finally relied on the perfect cooperation of another set of formations to completely keep himself out of the matter. The successive means dealt a great blow to Qi Yunxiao. After a long pause, there was only one thought left in his mind: it's over. With such a powerful attack, even a 9th level Qi refining strongman would have to peel off a layer of skin if he didn't die. Among all the people, Zhao Yunji was the most surprised. Her surprised pupils reflected the firelight, and she looked at Zhou Daocheng's tall and straight back, as if she was looking at a cloud of fog. What Qi family cultivator? What spirit snake sect? What Shanhai sect? What formation? She knew nothing, and only saw this terrifying battle. Her young Taoist partner had planned everything and killed a 9th level Qi training expert. At this moment, she realized that she might never have known this Taoist partner. Zhou Daocheng looked at the situation in the center of the formation seriously, frowned slightly, and his spiritual energy fluctuated, including in important parts of his body. He vaguely felt that there was still a weak vitality, and the splitting gold formation did not directly kill this strong man. He did not choose to approach rashly, but waited silently. Whether the middle-aged man was seriously injured and unconscious, or had other plans, Zhou Daocheng planned to adapt to all changes. While waiting, he turned his head silently to look at Qi Yunxiao, signaling Meng Yushan and Lin Yuan to control him. Then at this moment, a dark figure suddenly rushed out of the splitting gold formation, and a weak breath burst out at a terrifying speed, and rushed towards Qi Yunxiao in an instant. "Hurry up, Yunxiao, go back and report this to the family." A hoarse voice sounded, and a pair of big hands slapped Qi Yunxiao, slapping him dozens of meters away, out of the encirclement of Meng Yushan and others. The situation changed so quickly that Zhou Daocheng didn't react. When he turned around again, he saw a middle-aged man with a charred body lying on the ground, almost dying. And Qi Yunxiao also flew a long distance away. Meng Yushan was about to catch up, but was stopped. Zhou Daocheng just shook his head calmly. An extremely weak voice sounded beside him. Hey, cough cough cough, no. I didn't expect you to be so cunning and so courageous. You dug a fire pit for me to jump into. I really miscalculated. My Mo Yunshan Qi family, a dignified 1,000-year-old family, was actually played around by a junior like you. You can't stand it, but that's it. As long as Yunxiao brings the news back to the family, cough cough cough. When he weakly raised his head and looked into Zhou Daocheng's eyes, he didn't see the expected anger. Zhou Daocheng just looked at him calmly. The middle-aged man grinned and said, I wonder if I can ask you a question. When did you find us? Zhou Daocheng's eyes moved slightly, and he said absent-mindedly, when we came out of Balin Lake. No, impossible. How could you have found us so early? I used the 9th level of Qi refining as a cover, and it is absolutely impossible for you to find us. The middle-aged man was full of disbelief. Zhou Daocheng looked at him like a fool, curled his lips and said, You only care about the breath, but when you came to the shore of Balin Lake, didn't you wipe out the footprints on the ground? Footprints. The middle-aged man was confused for a moment, and asked in confusion, Isn't it normal for footprints to appear around the base? It is normal, but our Zhou family doesn't use the soles of shoes with 6 auspicious cloud patterns. Just because of this, Zhou Daocheng was absent-minded, glanced at the middle-aged man lightly, and suddenly asked, Isn't this enough, and you talk to me so much, are you trying to buy a chance for Qi Yunxiao to escape? This. But do you think I will let him go? After speaking, the middle-aged man's pupils shrank suddenly. You. Zhou Daocheng's face showed a look of joy, and his right hand hidden in his sleeve was slightly floating with spiritual energy, and he whispered softly, Caught. The next moment, a huge thorny vine emerged from the jungle in the distance and entangled a young man. It was Qi Yunxiao who was trying to escape. Seeing this scene, the middle-aged man's teeth were chattering. He just wanted to roar, but was unable to do so. Only at this moment did he understand why the young man in front of him was chatting with him so much. He was secretly manipulating the formation to capture Qi Yunxiao. However, before he could continue to speak, the magic weapon in Meng Yushan's hand had already struck and cut off his head. Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he looked at the dead middle-aged man and Qi Yunxiao who was recaptured. Although most of the golden jade vine formation was destroyed, with only one thorn vine left, Qi Yunxiao was also seriously injured, so he still caught it after all. At this moment, Qi Yunxiao screamed in horror and kept struggling, his eyes full of fear and fear. Let me go, if you kill me, the Qi family will never let you go, and they will not stop fighting. Let me go, today. The matter is clear between you and me. Poof. Zhou Daocheng didn't talk nonsense. The thorns and vines tightened his body, the flesh and blood collapsed, the bones were misaligned, and the breath of life gradually dissipated. It's over. Zhou Daocheng looked at the 2 corpses in front of him, still with a trace of fear in his eyes. The Qi family's desire for revenge was stronger than he imagined, which made him feel a strong sense of uneasiness. Moreover, if he killed a 9th level Qi refining expert and the young master of the Qi family today, there would be endless consequences. There is no airtight wall in the world. Even if it is hidden this time, the Qi family will definitely be able to detect something. He could only hope that Shan Heizong's reputation would arouse the fear of the Qi family and not dare to act rashly. When everything was over, Zhou Daocheng suddenly looked at Zhao Yunji with regret and helplessness. Zhao Yunji, you shouldn't have come out with me this time, you shouldn't have seen so many things, and you shouldn't have known so many secrets. Zhao Yunji was stunned for a moment, and couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. You want to kill people and silence them. Should I believe you? Zhou Daocheng looked complicated. This time, he has exposed too many secrets. The inheritance of the formation, the identity of the Shanhai sect, the killing of the Qi family monks. If any secret is exposed, it may bring disaster to the Zhou family and put him, Zhou Daocheng, into a desperate situation. After all, Zhao Yunji was not from the Zhou family, but was forced to marry him, Zhou Daocheng. If she had second thoughts, the consequences would be disastrous. Zhao Yunji also looked complicated. You and I have the name of husband and wife, and we also have the reality of husband and wife. The name was given by the family, but it is not entirely voluntary on your part. If you have the chance, would you also want to get rid of your current status? You don't need to deny this. I, Zhou Daocheng, am not a stupid person. As the daughter of Erling Genshin, you women, of course, are not willing to be reduced to this, and you and I know this very well. Zhao Yunji smiled bitterly and couldn't find a reason to refute for a while. He just looked at the familiar face of the young man in front of him and felt a little strange. Then what are you going to do? Kill me? Zhou Daocheng shook his head and said, I have a spiritual secret method, are you willing to use it? The secret method of mind control. Zhao Yunji's face turned pale, as if he had thought of it. He looked at Meng Yushan and Lin Yuan next to him, with a look of understanding on his face. I see, what if I don't want to? Zhou Daocheng thought for a moment and said in a deep voice, I will still believe you once and let you leave, but if I find out that you leak the news, I will kill you again. Zhao Yunji took a deep look at the person in front of him, full of coldness. After a long time, he replied, use the secret method. I don't believe you will really let me go. Zhou Daocheng touched his nose and said solemnly, I, Zhou Daocheng, have always been honest and trustworthy. I am an upright person. I never go back on my words, let alone deceive others. Ha ha, Zhao Yunji sneered and said disdainfully, every time you come to ask for advice on cultivation problems at night, you are always so high-sounding, and you like to touch your nose when you lie. Zhou Daocheng's face turned red and he coughed a few times to hide his embarrassment. Unexpectedly, his little personality was clearly noticed by others, which really made him blush. Forget it, I, Zhao Yunji, come from the Zhao family, and I have a strong family tradition. Since I marry you, I will be your Zhou Daocheng. This mysterious magic, I will accept it. Seeing Zhao Yunji's determined look, Zhou Daocheng sighed helplessly. He didn't dare to gamble, so he could only be cruel. After condensing a mysterious method, Zhao Yunji looked indifferent and did not resist. When the process of the secret method was completely completed, Zhou Daocheng took out a breath and showed a relaxed smile. Yunji, I'm really sorry. Zhao Yunji's face was as frosty as he glanced at Zhou Daocheng coldly and uttered two words, get out. Oh shit, didn't you just say you were mine? Zhou Daocheng had a toothache. Zhao Yunji said with a, ha-ha, sneer, indeed, now that you are using spiritual magic to control me, I should be considered your slave now. It doesn't have to be like this. I have no choice but to do it. Looking at Zhou Daocheng's guilty eyes, Zhao Yunji's face turned frosty. He bowed slightly, and in an extremely cold tone, said four words that Zhou Daocheng unexpectedly said, good master. I'm riding a horse. Zhou Daocheng's face turned green, and the corners of his mouth couldn't stop twitching. Seeing such an exciting scene, Meng Yushan turned around with great knowledge and whistled into the night sky. Lin Yuan was extremely ignorant and was still watching with wide eyes, but was pulled away by Meng Yushan. Ahem, Aunt Yunji, is this still you? Zhou Daocheng tried to lighten the atmosphere with a joking tone. But I never thought that Zhao Yunji still had a frosty face and said coldly, if the master likes this style, Yunji can change into a young woman's dress. Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but his eyes lit up. How do you know I like young women? Then can you wear silk moire stockings? The surprised gaze met a pair of even colder eyes. That, I was joking. As he finished speaking, he saw a black thread suddenly flying from not far away, with a cute cloud pattern, soft lace texture, and a brand new, unused ultra-thin model. Master, I have it. Lin Yuan shouted in a low voice. Zhao Yunji couldn't help but close his eyes and inhale, feeling that his chest was clogged. He glanced at the stockings coldly, turned around and left. Zhou Daocheng's head was instantly filled with black lines. Turning around, he grabbed Lin Yuan's collar and said, you fool, are you ruining my good deeds? And you're using the spirit stone I gave you to buy this thing. Young man, you have misunderstood. The stockings were on sale some time ago, at a historically low price. Which store? Orange Adult, Peach Lane, Baihifeng City, Store 302. This trip was eventually interrupted by an accident. Gold Splitting Formation and Golden Vine Formation were all destroyed, and the strength plummeted. The strong sense of insecurity made Zhou Daocheng finally choose to stop and delay the time to go to Baihifang City. Without the protection of the formation, he really didn't have the confidence to set off again. Collecting the storage bags of the middle-aged man and Qi Yunxiao, Zhou Daocheng began to check the harvest this time. Although the loss was heavy this time, it must be said that the inventory in the storage bags of these two people was still very rich. There were more than 800 spirit stones alone, and the rest were a large number of resources and monster materials, worth about 500 spirit stones. The rest of the magic tools, pills, talismans and other items have been used up in the battle. Except for a small amount of cheap pills, there are only a few magic tools that have not been destroyed. Among them, Qi Yunxiao has a set of beaching armor, which is of the first-class quality. Zhou Daocheng chose to wear it for himself. Zhou Daocheng gave Zhao Yunji the first-grade superior cold sword. Her magic weapon was only the first-grade medium-grade one, which she had recently earned herself to buy. After all, the Zhao family was weak, and it was difficult to have extra spirit stones to equip Zhao Yunji with magic weapons. Meng Yushan and Lin Yuan did not need the rest of the magic weapons. They all had their own magic weapons, and the quality was also up to the first-grade superior. Meng Yushan saw that Zhou Daocheng only took a set of inner armor, and asked worriedly, "Sir, don't you need to equip another attack magic weapon?" Zhou Daocheng shook his head and said indifferently, "These magic weapons are not suitable for me, and saving life is more useful than attacking." Meng Yushan thought about it and recalled his son's fighting style, so he didn't say much. After all, during Zhou Daocheng's battle, all his attack methods came from the formation, and he only had to be responsible for saving his life. This is not because he is going to extremes, but because the characteristics of the Wutu Kun Yu Gong make him feel that this way of fighting is more cost-effective. Since he has practiced the Wutu Kun Yu Gong, his offensive ability is doomed to be seriously insufficient, so it is better to make up for his shortcomings and further use his own characteristics to strengthen his defense. As for the means of attack, other methods can be used to make up for it, and the formation is a very good choice. It is precisely because of his terrifying defense that he can resist the breaking flame knife of the 9th level Qi refining man and then retreat unscathed. Others only saw his layout and saw his strategy of putting himself in a desperate situation and luring the enemy deep into his heart, but only the dead 9th level Qi refining cultivator knew how strong Zhou Daocheng's defense was. In addition to spirit stones, materials, magic tools, elixirs, etc., Zhou Daocheng found a surprising item in Qi Yunxiao's storage bag after searching. This is the inheritance of alchemy. Looking at the book in front of him, Zhou Daocheng's eyes lit up. It records in detail the process of refining elixirs, the selection and refining of medicinal materials, and several elixir recipes, which can prove the value of this book. Even Zhao Yunji, who left indifferently, was attracted back by this book, with a surprised look on her face. After some inspection, Zhou Daocheng found that this should be the formation inheritance of the Qi family of Mo Yunshan, but it was not a complete inheritance. The complete elixir inheritance of the Qi family should be able to reach the 2nd level middle grade or above, and the highest quality elixir recipe in the book in front of him is only the 1st level upper grade. Moreover, the number of elixir recipes is pitifully small, with only 6 kinds. Among them, 3 1st level lower grade ones are Qi nourishing elixir, Qi replenishing elixir, and blood clotting elixir. 2 1st level middle grade ones are Qi blood elixir and rejuvenating elixir. 1 1st level upper grade is the condensing elixir. There is no doubt that they are all the most common elixir, and their functions are mainly divided into 2 types, restoring mana and treating injuries. The only gratifying thing is that this elixir book has complete introductory knowledge of elixir, which should be used to train novice alchemists. Meng Yushan was full of surprise, and couldn't help but say, "Great, this is actually a set of elixir inheritance, we can be self-sufficient in elixir in the future." Zhou Daocheng glanced at him and asked, "You come to learn alchemy?" Meng Yushan blinked, scratched his head and said, "I'm over 40, I don't have this brain, I can't learn it." Lin Yuan, you are young. Lin Yuan shook his head like a rattle, and quickly refused, "I have 3 spiritual roots of water, wood and gold, which are not suitable for alchemy." Zhou Daocheng also shook his head helplessly. Alchemists and weapon refiners also have considerable requirements for spiritual roots. The most suitable ones are gold and fire spiritual roots, which can achieve twice the result with half the effort. The two looked at Zhao Yunji and greeted a plain sentence, water and wood spiritual roots. Oh, in the end, he has a fire spiritual root. However, he has already gone a long way in formation, and has made considerable achievements, so it is naturally impossible for him to turn to learning alchemy. As for learning two skills at the same time, it is also impossible. Every cultivator has limited energy and time to learn skills. Zhou Daocheng put most of his energy on cultivation and a small part on formations, which is already very strenuous. If he continues to learn alchemy, it may seriously affect the improvement of his strength. Sir, I remember Qin Lai seems to have a fire spirit root. Lin Yuan suddenly said. Zhou Daocheng's eyes lit up, but after thinking about it, he shook his head with some regret. Qin Lai is too old, it's a bit strenuous to learn. Meng Yushan looked strange and reminded carefully. Sir, Qin Lai is not really old, he is 30 years old, he just looks older. Yes, it should be because he has done too many bad things and aged prematurely. Lin Yuan echoed. Zhou Daocheng looked at Lin Yuan helplessly, always feeling that if he continued to speak so freely, he would be beaten sooner or later. However, the two people's proposals also gave Zhou Daocheng some ideas. If Qin Lai is really suitable, he can be trained. The requirements are not high. Just train a first-level alchemist. Many first-level elixirs are essential for cultivation. Whether it is to restore mana or repair injuries, they are indispensable on weekdays. If you go to Baihifang City to buy them, it will not only consume a lot of spirit stones, but also the journey is very long, which is extremely inconvenient. Then let's go back and try. After sorting out the harvest this time, the sky was already dawn. The four of them took a simple rest for a while and then set off on the return journey. After learning about Zhou Daocheng's terrifying strength, Zhao Yunji was no longer in a hurry to sell the silk inner armor. How could a formation master who has his own power, leads many 8th level qi refining masters, and is proficient in formations be short of spirit stones? Moreover, these hidden means have far more potential than imagined. How could he still think about competing for the position of the head of the Zhou family? Zhao Yunji had previously thought that Zhou Daocheng chose the smallest island and stayed on it every day without going out. He must be a person without ambition and was not capable of competing with his two brothers. As a Taoist partner, she still needed to find a way to assist Zhou Daocheng to prevent him from not being able to take out the most basic 1,300 spirit stones in the end and losing too badly. But now it seems that she was just overthinking. The means and scheming that Zhou Daocheng showed this time, as well as the hidden strength, made Zhao Yunji feel amazed and even incomprehensible. Looking at Zhou Daocheng, who had returned to peace and laziness, Zhao Yunji couldn't help but have a thought in her mind. If he had maintained his previous domineering attitude, it might not be unacceptable. Returning to Balin Lake, seeing the rippling lake, everyone's uneasy hearts calmed down. It is inevitable to worry when going out. After returning to their own cave, they will relax physically and mentally, and their sense of security will also increase a lot. Looking at this beautiful lake, Zhou Daocheng secretly made up his mind that he must make this place of shelter as solid as a rock, so that it can develop for a long time in the future. Especially after this sneak attack, it is necessary to prepare as many formations as possible to prevent encountering such a situation again. If it were not for the protection of Splitting Gold Formation and Golden Vine Formation, he would definitely be in danger this time. He has secretly made up his mind to stay in Balin Lake in the valley as much as possible in the future, reduce the frequency of going out, and focus on developing and strengthening his strength. If there is a situation where he has to go out, it is better to leave it to Meng Yushan and Lin Yuan to complete it. The two are casual cultivators, and they are more experienced in going out alone, and it is not easy to attract the enemy's prying. This experience also made Zhou Daocheng's behavior much more stable. The boat rowed to Zhao Yunji's island. Zhou Daocheng smiled and said, Aunt Yunji, the beautiful growing time is coming to an end, see you next time. But after saying that, Zhao Yunji didn't move, staring at Zhou Daocheng quietly, and said lightly, why don't you take me to your island to have a look? Zhou Daocheng blinked, why are you going to my place? Aren't all islands the same? It's no different from yours. Then don't you like the young woman? I will move in with you personally and give you silk moire gauze socks to wear. How about that? He spoke the most seductive words, but his voice was like a cold spring in the mountains, leaving Zhou Daocheng without any evil thoughts. Coupled with his slightly narrowed beautiful eyes, Zhou Daocheng scratched his head for a moment. Although he has used the secret method, Zhou Daocheng does not want too many people to know some secrets. Did you hide other women on the island? Not really. Is it a man? As he said that, he glanced at Meng Yushan and Lin Yuan in surprise, showing an expression of sudden realization. I understand. Zhou Daocheng said. What do you understand? Seeing that Zhao Yunji was about to leave the boat with sympathetic and apologetic eyes, Zhou Daocheng sighed. Forget it, if you want to go together, then get on the boat. Good. Seeing Zhao Yunji sitting back on the boat, Zhou Daocheng felt helpless. He knew that Zhao Yunji was determined to explore his secret. He had nothing to do about it. If Zhao Yunji was an outsider, he could naturally refuse sternly, but now that Zhao Yunji was one of his own and his Taoist companion, he couldn't be too harsh. Paddling across the long lake, the gentle sunlight shines down, and white-scaled bass leap out of the water from time to time, their scales reflecting the dazzling light. During this period, you have to find an opportunity to catch a batch of white-scaled bass. Only by fishing out the big batch can the small fry have a chance to thrive. Zhou Daocheng wrapped his hands with spiritual energy, grabbed a white-scaled bass weighing more than 10 kilograms, and thought about it. White-scaled bass live in this lake all year round. Although the number is not large, there is definitely a lot. Especially if you fish for the first time, you should be able to harvest a large number of fish. Lin Yuan looked at the water surface boredly, and suddenly became energetic and said, Can we eat it? I have a unique recipe, which uses refined salt and tangerine to marinate fish, and then pairs it with fresh bamboo shoots. The taste is amazing. Zhou Daocheng thought about it for a while and felt that something was wrong. Bamboo shoots. What bamboo shoots? After a few seconds, he suddenly reacted and said with a black face, If you dare to touch my boiling bamboo shoots, I will beat you into bamboo shoots and plant them in the ground. Lin Yuan shrank his neck and defended in a low voice, There are also things in the wild. On the side, Meng Yushan also looked eager, but he didn't want to drink fish soup or eat bamboo shoots. Instead, he smacked his lips and said, I also have a recipe. Use the spirit fish eyes to brew wine, which can nourish qi and blood and improve your strength. Zhou Daocheng was a little curious. Where did you get so many formulas? Hee, it's passed down from our ancestors. Meng Yushan grinned. Zhou Daocheng thought thoughtfully. Last time you used the recipe for Lin Yuan's whip to make wine. Is it possible that it was also passed down from our ancestors? As soon as these words came out, Lin Yuan's face turned the color of pig liver, and he looked at Meng Yushan with hatred. He still remembers the humiliation of baby soaking in wine. However, Meng Yushan thought about it seriously and said, This is really not inherited from my ancestors, but I can consider passing this formula on to my descendants. My surname is Meng, I am $@ $# and an $. Zhou Daocheng suddenly shuddered when he saw this scene. He suddenly had some new understanding of the 4 words, ancestral formula. No wonder some formula materials are rare. There is only one in an era. Once used up, it will be gone. Moreover, it is easy to become extinct. This is the reason for co-authoring. In a leisurely atmosphere, Zhou Daocheng returned to the island. Ignoring the quarrel between the 2 old men, Zhao Yunji followed Zhou Daocheng and looked at the island curiously. Soon, 8 acres of scattered spiritual fields appeared in front of them. The newly planted moonflower grass and crystal jade rice reveal their tender green buds, swaying gently in the breeze, and the moist soil exudes rich aura. Zhao Yunji frowned slightly, bent down and grabbed a handful of moist soil, thinking to himself, they are all first-order middle-grade spiritual fields, and the concentration of spiritual energy in this soil is so high, how can this be done? It's a mixture of spiritual dung, green-winged heron excrement and spiritual water. Zhou Daocheng said nonchalantly. I see, no wonder. Spiritual feces. Zhao Yunji's expression changed, he took a deep breath, threw away the soil in his hands, secretly used water attribute spiritual energy to wash his hands, and said angrily, Why didn't you tell me in advance? Zhou Daocheng looked innocent, spread his hands and said, You grabbed the ground as soon as you came. Although I don't understand, I respect you. Zhao Yunji pursed her lips. Although she had no evidence, She always felt that this guy was holding back his bad intentions. However, out of curiosity, she still raised her own question. If you go to collect green-winged heron feces, the green-winged heron won't attack you. Zhou Daocheng frowned and asked, isn't what you collected fresh feces? Is there a problem? Zhou Daocheng said speechlessly, the fresh ones are useless. We need the parts that have been thoroughly fermented and integrated with the soil. Forget it. I will ask them to collect an extra portion next time and send some to you. Zhou Daocheng has never forgotten the two specialties near Balin Lake. White-scaled base cannot usually be used, but the value of green-winged heron excrement is not small. Especially on weekdays, Huangzhou and others take care of the spiritual field for a long time and need to ensure the healthy growth of the spiritual plants, so they often need to water and fertilize. The water poured is spiritual water, and the fertilizer is green-winged heron excrement. At first, Huangzhou and others had no experience, so they just watered the spiritual liquid and fertilizer separately. But after a long time, they also figured out some experience, and according to some formulas of growth liquid, they began to mix it themselves. Mix the spiritual water and fertilizer in a certain proportion, and then add some spiritual plant juice that helps to enhance vitality to make a fertilizer with good effect. Zhou Daocheng called it Qinglu fertilizer liquid, which is also a unique formula with low technical content. This is the advantage of having many people. If he were to take care of the spiritual field alone, he would definitely not spend so much time and effort, let alone create this special fertilizer. But Huangzhou and others, in addition to daily practice, all their thoughts are on planting. Zhou Daocheng has decided that if he can buy books on planting, or the inheritance of spiritual plant masters, he can let Huangzhou study it. It's just that spiritual plant masters are also a profound immortal cultivation skill. Although they are not as good as alchemy formations, they are definitely not common. After checking the spiritual field, Zhao Yunji realized that she had been worrying for nothing. Why did Zhou Daocheng need her support? This 8-acre first-grade medium-quality spiritual field alone could bring a lot of wealth. Moreover, this is a spiritual field that is irrigated with spiritual water and fertilizer all year round and can be used without restraint. Generally speaking, ordinary spiritual fields need to rest for a period of time to restore fertility every few years after planting. This is a very important skill. After walking around the island, Zhao Yunji looked at the entrance of the underground cave and asked, can I go down? Zhou Daocheng thought for a moment and said sternly, no, not even wearing silk moire stockings. Zhao Yunji saw Zhou Daocheng's serious attitude and understood his bottom line, so he nodded obediently. Zhou Daocheng needed to cover up the situation in the underground cave. Not only Zhao Yunji could not enter, but Meng Yushan and others were also prohibited from entering. It's not that I don't trust them, it's that some items exist, and it would be a mistake to let outsiders know about them. However, since Zhao Yunji has been accepted, it is equivalent to letting her join his own force, so there is no need to hide the situation in the valley. After passing through the damp and dark mountain passage, his eyes suddenly opened up. Zhao Yunji looked at the vibrant scene in front of him and was shocked speechless for a moment. After a long time, he looked at Zhou Daocheng meaningfully and said inexplicably, Zhou Daocheng, you hide it deeply enough. No matter how she guessed, she could never guess that Zhou Daocheng actually hid a valley. The size of this valley is hardly weaker than that of a small force, and it is even superior to some qi refining forces in terms of all aspects of conditions. First-class high-grade spiritual veins. The spiritual field fills the entire valley, with higher quality and a large number of yellow thorn vines planted. Fish and shrimps are swimming, green water plants are floating, and there is a spiritual spring pool filled with spiritual energy. On the cliff, there are cultivation caves arranged neatly. In the corner of the valley, the earth-yellow mysterious formation patterns continue to operate. Every detail made Zhao Yunji feel like a dream. He couldn't believe that this was a paradise built by a boy in his early 20s in just 1 year. What shocked her even more was that there was a man here who was at the 8th level of qi refining. When he saw Zhou Daocheng come in, he respectfully called him young master. Seeing Zhao Yunji on the side, Qinlai thought for a moment and shouted respectfully, Madam. Zhao Yunji responded silently, not yet fully adapted. Returning to his own territory, Zhou Daocheng also relaxed a lot. No matter what kind of danger he encountered outside, he would feel at ease once he returned here. More importantly, there is a splitting gold formation in the valley, and Meng Yushan, Lin Yuan, and Qin Lai are all here. This is when Zhou Daocheng is the most powerful. The sense of security brought by strength cannot be replaced by any other item. Qin Lai was a little confused and asked, "Sir, why are you back so soon? Could there be some accident?" Zhou Daocheng roughly explained what happened. After listening, Qin Lai's expression became solemn, and he felt frightened just by listening to it. Facing the deliberate sneak attack by the 9th level Qi refining expert, he relied on formation methods to forcefully reverse the balance of victory, and finally killed the enemy and escaped. Return to White Scale Lake. Qin Lai solemnly said, "Well, after this incident, the Qi family with Mo Yunshan will probably really fight to the death." Zhou Daocheng shook his head slightly, with a hint of coldness in his eyes. "The Qi family will fight with us until death." "Ha ha, I should let them wait for my revenge." Qin Lai asked in confusion, "Master, do you want to take action against the Qi family?" "We will meet sooner or later," Zhou Daocheng explained. "If Qi Yunxiao is allowed to pass the news back to the Qi family, our identities will be exposed and they will naturally not let us go. But now, strong men from the Qi family have disappeared nearby one after another, which has further confirmed the existence of the Shanhai sect. There is also a secret threat from the Spirit Snake sect, and they dare not approach easily. So in the future, we will be safer. This is a great opportunity to improve our strength. Once our strength improves, we will not be afraid of the whole family." Although he narrowly escaped death, Zhou Daocheng never thought of letting it go. This hatred forged for no reason needs to be filled with blood. It's just that now, the Shanhai apostles have their own appearance, and it still needs time to develop and grow. Zhou Daocheng thought to himself, pondering the next development. After a long time, he looked at one person and said, "Huang Zhou, go and make arrangements. Half of all the first-level middle-grade yellow thorn vines will be harvested and then sent to the island." Half. Huang Zhou couldn't help asking, as if he couldn't believe his ears. Zhou Daocheng nodded. "We can't expect that all yellow thorn vines can reach the first level. We need to improve our strength as soon as possible. Let's do it as soon as possible." Huang Zhou nodded seriously, then immediately turned around and headed to the cliff cave, summoning several members of the 7th level of Qi refining to harvest the yellow thorn vine together. Zhou Daocheng turned to look at Meng Yushan again and asked, "Old Meng, are you responsible for the recent transaction with the Spirit Snake sect?" Meng Yushan nodded and said, "Yes, I am responsible for the receipt of formation materials and daily communication and cooperation." "Okay. Next time I contact the Spirit Snake sect, I will try to deepen the cooperative relationship. Let's say that we add one more set of golden jade vine formation every year in exchange for some formation materials. I will give you the specific list later." Meng Yushan didn't ask any questions and agreed directly. The materials he needs this time are auxiliary materials for laying out the formation. They are not as important as the core materials, and the price is relatively cheap, but the dosage is relatively large. I originally planned to buy some when I went to Baihifeng City, but now I encountered an unexpected situation and it was delayed. Zhou Daocheng also wanted to try it out, whether he could buy it directly from the Spirit Snake sect, which would save a lot of trouble. After explaining to Meng Yushan, Zhou Daocheng immediately looked at Qin Lai and handed over the alchemy book. "Young master, what is this?" Qin Lai asked in confusion. "Introduction to Alchemy, are you interested in trying it?" Zhou Daocheng asked with a trial attitude. Learning alchemy is not just about having a fire attribute spiritual root, it is more about talent and fate. If you don't have this talent, even a single fire attribute spiritual root will be useless. Alchemy skills. Qin Lai has a steady personality, and after thinking for a while, he nodded and said, "I can try, but it may not work. I hope you don't have too much hope." Zhou Daocheng just patted him on the shoulder and encouraged him, "Don't be stressed, I don't have much hope either." Qin Lai's face darkened, and he was a little helpless. "Young master, if you really don't know how to encourage, then don't encourage." Zhou Daocheng assigned tasks to almost everyone to improve the overall strength of the valley as much as possible. The foundation of a power never depends on a single individual, but is the result of many factors, including strength, inheritance, the supply of elixirs, magic tools, talismans, inheritance of skills, diplomatic cooperation, etc. What he is doing now is to enrich the structure of Shanghai sect as much as possible, so as to strengthen the foundation. Of course, this also includes himself. Whether it is personal strength or formation skills, they all need to be improved. Finally, he set his sights on Zhao Yunji and said, Yunji, there is a high probability that you will not go to Baihifeng City in the near future. How about selling the silk inner armor to the family? Okay, you can make the arrangements. Zhao Yunji nodded directly in agreement, which surprised Zhou Daocheng. Normally, if you sell an item to a family, the spiritual stones you receive in exchange will be relatively smaller, probably only about 80% of the market price. This is equivalent to a way of giving back to the family and providing benefits to the clan members. Many respected elders will not overly care about interests, and will choose to sell some higher quality natural materials and treasures to the family for internal use of the tribe. However, this situation is still relatively rare among the younger generation. After all, they still need to accumulate cultivation resources. Since he did not plan to go to Baihifeng City, Zhou Daocheng decided to sell the items that needed to be sold directly to the family at a low price. He did not intend to compete for the foundation building quota anyway, as long as he earned enough 1,300 low-grade spiritual stones. Moreover, Zhao Yunji's silk inner armor and his own Yuehua brewing are both of very good quality and valuable resources, and there is also a huge demand within the Zhou family. After thinking for a moment, Zhou Daocheng added, Don't worry, I won't let you suffer. I will replenish the lost spiritual stones. Zhao Yunji was looking at the fish and shrimp in the Lingquan pond. Hearing this, he was stunned, suddenly turned his head, looked at Zhou Daocheng and said seriously, As Taoists, you and I don't need to be so polite, just forget about this spiritual stone. Zhou Daocheng also smiled sarcastically, secretly thinking that he was still being cautious. Zhao Yunji walked around the valley, and after getting familiar with the situation here, he followed Zhou Daocheng back to Balin Lake. Not long after returning to the underground cave, Zhou Daocheng received a message from his eldest brother Zhou Daobai. Seeing the content of the communication, Zhou Daocheng had to sigh, what a coincidence. It was about white-scaled bass. The family asked Zhou Daocheng and the others to start fishing for white-scaled bass. Uncle 17th Zhou Shumu was already on the way and would buy the fish back to the family at 30% of the market price. Even though it was only 30% of the market price, this money was completely given to Zhou Daocheng and the others. After all, the cultivation of white-scaled bass did not require the three of them to worry about it, they only needed to fish. The eldest brother Zhou Daobai contacted him to discuss fishing for white-scaled bass. Zhou Daocheng thought for a while and immediately went to his eldest brother Zhou Daobai's island. As soon as he landed on the island, Zhou Daobai was already waiting here. He gave Zhou Daocheng a hug warmly and complained a little, "Sixth brother, you are a bit too much. You have been in Balin Lake for so long and you didn't come to see my elder brother." Zhou Daocheng smiled bitterly and said, "Brother, you are really busy practicing, how can you have time to visit us? Forget it, let's get together today and talk about catching white-scaled bass. Uncle 17 is already on his way and will be here in about half a month. We have to complete the fishing as soon as possible during this time." Zhou Daobai walked into the yard and made a pot of tea for Zhou Daocheng. "Is Uncle 17 the only one here? The white-scaled bass is worth a lot of money. Uncle 17's strength." "Ha ha ha." Zhou Daobai smiled and patted Zhou Daocheng's shoulder. "I haven't seen you for a year, and your vision has improved a lot. Are you looking down on Uncle 17's strength?" Zhou Daocheng spread his hands helplessly. "Aren't I afraid that Uncle 17 will be robbed on the way?" Although 17th Uncle Shou Mu is a show character, he is not too old, only in his early 30s, and he only has the talent of the 4 spiritual roots. Now he has barely reached the late stage of chi refining. After Zhou Daobai teased a few words, he also reassured Zhou Daocheng, "Don't worry, the second elder will pass by Balin Lake when he comes back from hunting. Then he will take Uncle 17 back with him." "That's good." Zhou Daocheng nodded in agreement, and the two chatted for a while, drank some tea and ate some pastries, and then began to discuss fishing for white-scaled bass. On the one hand, we need to consider the fishing method, and secondly, we need to keep it fresh after fishing to prevent deterioration. The white-scaled bass in the lake range in size from large to small, and some screening is required to ensure that only mature first-class white-scaled bass are caught. However, Balen Lake is very vast, and it takes a lot of time just to fish, not to mention screening. Zhou Daocheng also asked if there was an efficient way to quickly screen and catch white-scaled bass. But Zhou Daobai spread his hands and took out 3 sets of fishing nets from the warehouse. Zhou Daocheng looked at the vast Balen Lake, and then at the 5 long fishing net in his hand. 1 head and 2 were as big as one. Brother, you really think highly of me. You won't have to go into the water to fish it out yourself, right? There's nothing we can do about it. It's our first time raising fish for the Zhou family. It's normal for our technology to be immature. Zhou Daocheng held his forehead, sighed and said, "Forget it, brother, please leave the fishing task to me and Yunji, and you will be responsible for the subsequent preservation work, how about it?" Zhou Daobai glanced at Zhou Daocheng in surprise and asked, "Do you have any good ideas?" "Try it, it's easier than fishing for fish in the water." Zhou Daocheng rubbed his eyebrows, threw away the broken fishing net in his hand, and began to think in his mind. Fishing with fishing nets is definitely not a long-term solution. We must find another way. After thinking for a long time, a plan emerged in Zhou Daocheng's mind. As a modern person, he is more inclined to fully automatic fishing. After briefly simulating it in his mind, Zhou Daocheng began to prepare. There were not many tools used, only 2, iron cage and spirit gathering array. The iron cage needs to be specially made, wide outside and narrow inside, so that the first-grade top-quality big fish can enter it, but cannot come out. The first-grade middle and lower-quality fish can enter and exit. Zhou Daocheng made a total of more than a dozen cages like this, and placed a large amount of fresh loach and snail meat inside the cages, which are the favorite foods of white-scaled perch. These cages are all placed around the spiritual veins in the water, because the first-grade top-quality white-scaled perch generally live in areas with rich spiritual energy. In addition, he also specially arranged 3 sets of spirit-gathering arrays and placed them around the iron cages to increase the concentration of spiritual energy around and attract white-scaled perch to come. This set of fishing methods not only completes the selection of fish, but also does not require too much effort. You only need to check it once a day and catch the white-scaled perch that meets the requirements. In just one day, 5 first-grade top-quality white-scaled perch were harvested, which was a good harvest. Zhou Daobai was responsible for making storage and transportation tools. He covered a thick layer of ice in a sealed huge box, and then quickly froze the fresh white-scaled perch. Every day after that, he would fish day after day. Seeing the white-scaled perch being pulled out of the water, Zhou Daocheng was in a very good mood. A first-grade white-scaled perch, without any processing, is worth about 150 low-grade spirit stones. But if it is sold to some high-end restaurants, the price can more than double. Chapter 71. Zhou Daocheng handed the fishing work to Lin Yuan, and he took advantage of the last period of time to replenish the array disc inventory again. After returning to the underground cave, Zhou Daocheng checked the various materials in the warehouse. Thanks to the cooperation with the Spirit Snake sect, a lot of high-quality materials have been obtained recently, which can be used as the core materials of the array. For example, Jin Jie Tai Shi, giant scale bamboo, fire lang shi, and the yellow thorn vine planted by himself. Jin Jie Tai Shi is the main material of Golden Sword Array. The properties of the 2 are extremely consistent. The quality of the array refined is very high, and even the success rate is improved. Fire lang shi can be used to refine flame array disc, which can be combined with the materials of Golden Sword Array disc to refine a more powerful gold split array disc. Therefore, Zhou Daocheng piled the fire lang shi and Jin Jie Tai Shi together, and after refining, 100 kilograms of raw ore were refined into more than 10 kilograms of concentrate. This amount can probably make 3 sets of gold split array. The number of yellow thorn vines is the largest. Huangzhou harvested half of the yellow thorn vines, about 60 vines. Each set of golden jade vine formation requires about 10 vines, so about 6 sets of arrays can be refined. However, the refining of golden jade vine formation also requires gold and iron, which conflicts with gold splitting formation, which makes Zhou Daocheng a little distressed. To be honest, the power of thorn vine formation is more than double that of golden jade vine formation. If there is no other way, Zhou Daocheng naturally hopes to refine a more powerful golden jade vine formation. Finally, after weighing, Zhou Daocheng decided to refine one set of gold splitting formation and two sets of golden jade vine formation. Although the gold splitting formation is more powerful, its controllability is too poor, and its service life is also very short. The cost performance is far less than that of golden jade vine formation. Only a few sets need to be kept as a backup. On the contrary, the golden vine formation performed very stably in all aspects and greatly improved the overall strength. Whether it was attacking or defending, or even restraining the enemy, it performed very well. Finally, Zhou Daocheng looked at the 20 giant scale bamboos and fell into deep thought for a while. In the formation diagram inherited from the formation, there was no formation specifically arranged using giant scale bamboo. The only related bamboo forest formation was just a first-level low-grade defense formation, and its power was too low. After thinking for a long time, Zhou Daocheng decided to give up the giant scale bamboo for the time being, and it would not be too late to use it again when there was a better idea in the future. In the next 10 days, Zhou Daocheng devoted himself to the refining of the formation, almost to the extent of day and night, and his spiritual energy was exhausted many times. The high concentration of the spirit, coupled with the continuous squeezing of spiritual energy, also brought Zhou Daocheng an unexpected surprise. After refining the splitting gold formation plate, his strength successfully reached the peak of the 7th level of qi refining. The recovered spiritual energy made Zhou Daocheng's refining speed faster again, and at the same time, his understanding of the first-level medium-grade array formation became deeper in the process. It took more than 20 days in total for Zhou Daocheng to refine a set of splitting gold array plate and two sets of golden vine array plate, and he was confident again. The ability to complete the manufacturing in such a short time was also due to the improvement of strength and the support of the huge spiritual energy of Wutu Kun Yu Gong. The condensed Wutu spiritual energy in the body is comparable to the mana of the 9th level qi refining strongman, and even in terms of defense and durability, it is stronger than the 9th level qi refining. This is equivalent to a 9th level qi refining strongman refining a first level medium grade array plate. The efficiency is naturally improved a lot, and the probability of failure is also very low. Ending more than 20 days of retreat, Zhou Daocheng took out the harvested crystal jade spirit rice, without any side dishes, and directly cooked 2 large bowls to replenish the consumed spirit and spiritual power. Afterwards, after tidying up his hair and clothes, he left the underground cave. Looking at the bright sunshine on the island, Zhou Daocheng's mood also improved a lot. Look at the time, Uncle 17 and the second elder should have arrived. I don't know when they will return to the family. While thinking, the communication stone in his arm suddenly vibrated. 6th brother, are you coming out? Second grandfather and Uncle 17 have been waiting for a long time. It's time to return to the family soon. Zhou Daocheng thought to himself that it was true. After a simple reply, he took advantage of the last time to go to the valley and handed a set of golden vine formation array plates to Meng Yushan. Meng Yushan and others need to stay in the valley. With a set of splitting gold formation and a set of golden vine formation to protect them, their safety is still guaranteed. As for the subsequent development, it is nothing more than continuing to practice, managing the planting and breeding industries, and occasionally cleaning up the surrounding monsters. When Zhou Daocheng finished all this and rushed to Zhou Daobai Island, everyone else was already here. Junior Zhou Daocheng, meet the second elder, meet Uncle 17. Before he could finish his words, Zhou Shumu gave him a big bear hug. Oh, Daocheng, you have grown up so much. The last time I saw you, you were still wearing open crotch pants. Ahem. Zhou Daocheng's face immediately turned cold, and he said seriously, Uncle 17, don't talk nonsense, we just met at the ancestor worship last year, I didn't wear open crotch pants. And, when I wore open crotch pants, you were not necessarily older than me. Pa, Zhou Shumu slapped him on the back of his head, you dare to talk back, no matter what, I am your uncle. Looking at Uncle 17 who was not much older than himself, Zhou Daocheng was speechless. At this time, Zhou Daobai coughed a few times and reminded in a low voice, Daocheng, Uncle 17 brought us some medium-quality side dishes, red frost radish and white pear vegetables, so be careful with your words. Ah, Zhou Daocheng was stunned, and his heart couldn't help but feel warm. Uncle 17 was not talented, and he thought he had no chance to go further, so he often used the spirit stones he had saved to buy some daily practice supplies for his nephew of the Dao generation. Thinking of the days when he ate white rice, Zhou Daocheng was inexplicably moved, and hurriedly changed the subject and said, Uncle 17, don't say anything, you can let me wear open crotch pants now. No, you don't need to ask, nephew will change for you now. Hey, it's not necessary, you are polite. That won't work, I, Zhou Daocheng, must wear it today, otherwise my Taoism will be unstable. Hey, why is it so? Why is it so? Cough cough. The dry cough interrupted the tiger's words. The second elder rolled his eyes at the two and said seriously, okay, you are already married, and you are still fighting and quarreling, how can it be? Although the second elder was very pleased to see the harmonious relationship between the descendants of the family, but taking off pants in public is really a disgrace to the family. At the same time, looking at Zhou Daocheng, he was also a little strange in his heart. When did this dull gourd become so cunning? After being scolded, Zhou Shumu was also helpless. He found that his sixth nephew had changed. More than twice as thick-skinned. On the side, Zhao Yunji couldn't help but shook her head. If she hadn't seen Zhou Daocheng's sinister and vicious scene, she would have been deceived. But to be honest, she really wanted to kick Zhou Daocheng just now. Although the second elder scolded him, he was still in a very comfortable mood, especially when he saw the harvest of white-scaled base. Dao Bai, Dao Cheng, Yunji, this time we harvested a total of 32 white-scaled base, all of which are of first-class quality, better than the family expected. The second elder said, with a hint of excitement in his eyes. According to the original budget, White Scale Lake only has one first-level mid-grade spiritual vein, and it is lucky to have a few first-level high-grade white-scale base occasionally. But I didn't expect that more than 30 top-grade white-scaled base were caught. Others may not know the reason, but Zhou Daocheng knows very well that this is not a first-order middle-grade spiritual vein at all, but a real second-order low-grade spiritual spring eye. Not to mention the first-class white-scaled base, but also the second-class ones, maybe they are all hidden in a corner, but they just haven't been caught. The second elder took out a storage bag, but said, White Scale Lake is managed by the three of you after all. The family will buy these white-scale base at 30% of the market price. Second Grandpa, I have learned about it in advance, and one of them is intact and undamaged. The white-scaled base is worth 150 low-grade spiritual stones. There are 32 of them here, with a total value of 4,800 low-grade spiritual stones. I need to give you 1,440 low-grade spiritual stones. With that said, the second elder took out the spirit stone, divided it into 3 parts, and handed them to the 3 of them respectively. Zhou Daocheng looked at the 480 low-grade spiritual stones in his hand, and said with a helpless smile, Second elder, the white-scaled base is kept in the lake, and we didn't bother to take it. It's really inappropriate to just take so many spiritual stones for nothing. Zhou Daobai also echoed, It's true that second elder, we really have no reason to take this money. The second elder waved his hand seriously, Rules are rules. Since you have eaten this bowl of rice, you must take this benefit and keep it. Seeing the serious attitude of the second elder, Zhou Daocheng said nothing more, but changed the subject and said, By the way, second elder, do you still have any spiritual stones in your pocket? The second elder was shocked when he heard this, secretly covered his storage bag, and asked slightly nervously, What do you want to do? Zhou Daocheng was also dumbfounded. Perhaps in the heart of the second elder, he was still thinking about saving money to repay the spiritual stones for the foundation establishment pill. This is what the second elder has been doing for more than 10 years. All the spiritual stones earned in the hunting team will be handed over to the family. Zhou Daocheng waved his hand and said, That's it. Some of the resources produced by Yunji Island and I are going to be sold directly to the family. Is it in compliance with the rules? Sell it to the family. Second elder Zhou Chengping looked a little surprised. If it is sold to the family, the price should be slightly lower than the market price. Are you sure? Zhou Daocheng nodded and took out 30 jars of Yuehua brewing. I originally planned to sell it to Baihifeng City, and I had even reached an agreement with the shop owner. However, due to various reasons, I had no choice but to give up. When the second elder saw the wine jar, his eyes lit up and he sniffed. Members of the hunting team are out all year round. They are always faced with the threat of monsters and the dangers of the natural environment. They are under great mental pressure and often need spiritual wine to relieve the stress. However, the price of spiritual wine on the market is generally relatively expensive. If it is supplied all year round, you may not have to spend much money on it, so you will only occasionally buy 1 or 2 pots of first-class low-grade spiritual wine to satisfy your cravings. Now that he saw 30 jars of Yuehua brewing and smelled the fragrance of the wine, the second elder felt relaxed and happy. Daocheng, I didn't expect you to choose the wine-making industry. And the smell of this wine doesn't seem to be an ordinary wine recipe. Zhou Daocheng smiled and said, the wine recipe I accidentally obtained in Fengshi is called Yuehua Niang. It is a first-class mid-grade quality. However, the brewing time is still short. If it is stored for a period of time, the aroma of the wine should be more intense. I'm being modest, the aroma of this wine is much better than other mixed wines on the market. The second elder sighed and asked, Daocheng, are you sure you want to sell it to the family? The family should only be able to offer 80% of the price. Zhou Daocheng has already made preparations. On the one hand, he is too lazy to go to Baihifeng City, and on the other hand, he also wants to give back to his family. It is a big pity that our own formation cannot be used by the family in a short period of time. After all, if there is the assistance of formation, at least the number of casualties of the hunting team will be greatly reduced. He was also considering whether to reveal his identity as an array mage to his family elders. He could conceal it a little and say that he was the inheritance of a first-order array mage, but after thinking for a long time, he finally made no decision. In essence, although he is Zhou Daocheng's body, he is not Zhou Daocheng's soul. He may care more about his own safety than the interests of his family. After receiving Zhou Daocheng's accurate response, the second elder happily put away the spiritual wine and took out 1,200 low-grade spiritual stones. As if worried that he would take advantage, the second elder also wanted to make up for some of the family's contribution points, but was rejected by Zhou Daocheng. After all, rules are rules. Since you have made a decision, you must bear the consequences of this decision. Later, Zhao Yunji took out his silk inner armor, which also surprised the second elder. The quality of the inner armor is first-level mid-grade. It is extremely light, thin and tough, has strong defensive power, and can withstand water and fire attacks to a certain extent. If members of the hunting team can wear one, they can save their lives at critical moments. Moreover, this kind of inner armor is sold in the market or with defensive magic tools, and it has a very high value, so there is no need to worry about sales. Originally, there were 6 sets of silk inner armor, one of which was given to Zhou Daocheng, who is now wearing it. The remaining 5 sets are worth 300 low-grade spirit stones per set, and the total value is also 1,500 spirit stones. According to the market price, it is 1,200 spirit stones. After the transaction was completed, the second elder was moved and even embarrassed. After all, whether it is Yuehua wine or silk inner armor, once sold in the market, it can be sold at a price far higher than the price given by the family. Such an acquisition is indeed suspected of taking advantage of the younger generation. Finally, the second elder looked at Zhou Daobai and said, Daobai, don't sell it to the family again, otherwise the second elder will be criticized for taking advantage of you kids. Zhou Daosai showed a gentle smile and said, I do plan to sell it to the family, but my things need to be handed over directly to the head of the family. The second elder immediately blew his beard and glanced at Zhou Daobai unhappily. What is so mysterious? Even I can't know it. Zhou Daobai didn't say much, but just smiled meaningfully, which made Zhou Daocheng curious. After some delay, everyone set out on the journey home. In theory, with such an important family station here, Zhou Daocheng and the other 2 cannot all leave, and they must leave someone to stay here. But this time, several people have reasons to go back. Zhou Daocheng and Zhao Yunji have been married for a year, and they need to go to the Zhao family. And Zhou Daobai also has important items to hand over to the head of the family, and it seems to be of great importance, so he must hand them over in person. Therefore, the second elder left a few members of the hunting team to garrison outside Balin Lake and temporarily take over the place. Returning to Tianqi Mountain, the familiar scene appeared before us again. The Zhou family monks coming and going showed the prosperity of the family. In the family meeting hall, Zhou Daocheng and 3 others stood in front of the head of the family and shouted respectfully, "I have seen Grandpa." Zhou Chengyi put down the book in his hand, his stern face revealed a hint of gentleness, and said, "How have you 3 developed over the past year?" Zhou Daocheng and Zhao Yunji looked at each other, took a step forward together, and each placed 1,300 spirit stones in front of the family head. Zhou Chengyi took a deep look at the 2 of them. It was not 1,000, not 2,000, but exactly 1,300 spirit stones. The attitudes of Zhou Daocheng and the 2 were already very obvious. "Daocheng, don't you plan to compete for the foundation building spot?" the head of the family asked in a deep voice. Zhou Daocheng is neither humble nor arrogant. The 4th brother is proficient in weapon refining, and the eldest brother has outstanding talent in cultivation. He is more suitable for this opportunity than me. It is more suitable for me to stay at Biscale Lake with peace of mind. "What about you, Yunji?" Zhao Yunji said calmly. "Daocheng's choice is my choice." Zhou Chengyi was slightly surprised. After being silent for a while, he encouraged, "Daocheng has made rapid progress in cultivation, and is no longer weaker than your elder brother. Yunji is also a genius with 2 spiritual roots. You don't have to belittle yourselves. The path to becoming an immortal is to change your destiny. Fight hard. Follow Grandpa's teachings." In the past, Zhou Daocheng might still have fought for it, but today, this idea has become less and less. He believes that with his own accumulation, even without the help of his family, he can get a glimpse of the scenery of the foundation building period. Zhao Yunji was the same, unable to resist the injustice of fate, but the hidden strength shown by Zhou Daocheng gave her new hope. At least, she would rather Zhou Daocheng was ruthless and forcefully forced her to use spiritual magic, than Zhou Daocheng would really rather be regarded as a useless person who doesn't fight for anything. As the head of the family, Zhou Chengyi naturally saw the changes between the 2 of them. A trace of worry could not help but appear on his brows. The most worrying thing was that the descendants of the family had lost the spirit of fighting. After saying goodbye and leaving, Zhou Daocheng and Zhao Yunji did not stay in Tianqi Mountain for a long time, but immediately set off for the Zhao family. Out of etiquette, Zhou Daocheng finally wanted to meet Zhao Yunji's parents. After walking for a while, Zhou Daocheng seemed to notice something was wrong, and asked with some confusion, "Yunji, this shouldn't be the direction to Qingtai Mountain, right?" Hearing this, Zhao Yunji couldn't help rolling his eyes and said, "You really don't know anything about the Zhao family's situation. You can't blame me for this. You know, I don't know much about the Zhou family's situation." Zhou Daocheng spread his hands indifferently. Zhao Yunji helplessly held up his forehead, and the veins on his white forehead were pulsing, but after thinking about it for a moment, he found that this was really the case. So he replied helplessly, "The Ma family has been pursuing the Zhao family fiercely. Not only the shops were oppressed and closed down, but even the monks of the Zhao family would be attacked when they left Qingtai Mountain. Therefore, after discussion within the family, they moved their ancestral home to Tianqi, near the mountains. So that's it." Zhou Daocheng thought thoughtfully, but he didn't expect that the Ma family was so perseverant that they didn't let the Zhao family go. Even Zhou Daocheng found it a bit troublesome to be stuck by such a piece of dead skin plaster. Although he didn't know much about the internal situation of the family, he still knew what the Ma family was doing, not only targeting the Zhao family, but also pursuing and intercepting the Zhou family. In particular, the Zhou family's Beiki Pavilion, managed by the 4th brother Zhou Daoqi, was said to have suffered heavy losses. Not only were the transportation routes destroyed, but many elders of the family were injured, and even an uncle who was a keeper of the family died unexpectedly. This year, Zhou Daoqi has not returned to Tianqi Mountain yet. It is said that he is dealing with this matter. Okay, if we move near Tianqi Mountain, the 2 families can also strengthen cooperation. Zhou Daocheng nodded in approval. After almost a day's journey, the 2 arrived at the Zhao family's new residence. It seems to commemorate the former ancestral land, so this new ancestral land is also named Qingtai Mountain. However, something unexpected happened during this visit to relatives. As soon as he arrived at the door of Zhao's house, Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but frown. He clearly noticed that the attitude of the Zhao family members after seeing the 2 people was very different from what he expected. The monks of the Zhao family who were guarding the foot of the mountain saw Zhou Daocheng and the others arriving. Not only did they not show any respect, nor did they show joy, but their eyes were full of alienation. Zhou Daocheng frowned slightly, but he still said politely, Zhou Daocheng of the Zhou family and Zhao Yunji are here to visit relatives first. The younger Zhao family monk just glanced at Zhao Yunji coldly and muttered in a subtle voice, "Hey, it's just a old woman, and she still dares to return to the Zhao family." Zhou Daocheng and Zhao Yunji are both strong men in the late stage of qi refining, and their ears are extremely good. Their expressions changed drastically when they heard these words. Zhao Yunji's face turned pale, and her delicate body couldn't help but tremble. She never thought that after she left for a year, there would be such discussion within the family. Zhou Daocheng's face was also extremely gloomy. The Zhou family saved the Zhao family's life, and now even asked them to move the family's ancestral home to Tianqi Mountain. I didn't expect the Zhao family to have such an attitude. The older Zhao family monk next to him also changed his expression slightly when he heard this, and secretly pulled the young man behind him. However, he also said with a cold face, Zhao Yunji, there is no need to visit relatives. Since you have married into the Zhou family, you have nothing to do with the Zhao family anymore. There is no need to come back to embarrass the Zhao family. Zhao Yunji's face was livid and his breathing was a little heavy. Uncle 14, what do you mean? Don't call me 14th uncle. The man's face was full of disgust, and he said without hiding, I am a genius of the second spiritual root of the young generation of the Zhao family. I will never shamelessly serve as a concubine of the Zhou family's younger generation for my own selfish desires. You should go back. Zhao Yunji's pupils contracted, and her slender knuckles under her long sleeves clenched tightly, and her breath was slightly disordered. After a long time, she barely calmed down and said coldly, Is this my father's idea, or yours? This is the idea of the Zhao family, and the Zhao family is not the Zhao family of you and your daughter. Zhao Yunji took a deep breath and looked deeply at the two people in front of her. One was an uncle and the other was a nephew. They were both former clansmen, but they were so unfamiliar at this moment. Daocheng, let's go. Zhao Yunji turned around and grabbed Zhou Daocheng and tried to leave. Just as she touched Zhou Daocheng's sleeves, she felt her hands numb, and the heavy Wu earth aura covered her body, and the breath as heavy as a mountain could not be shaken. Zhao Yunji's pupils contracted, and she saw Zhou Daocheng's eyes flashing with coldness. He slapped his palm slowly. His movements seemed ordinary, but they were full of unstoppable momentum. Boom, bang, wrapped in the Wu Earth spiritual energy, in the incredible eyes of everyone, his palm slapped hard on the chest. In an instant, the old man's chest was sunken, his bones were dislocated, and his body flew backwards uncontrollably, carrying the young man behind him, and hit the door behind him hard, making a loud, bang, sound. Puff, the blood spurted out in the form of mist, forming a blood mist in the air. The old man's face instantly turned pale, and he looked at the young man in front of him in horror. You, what are you going to do? Zhou Daocheng raised his eyebrows and found that the quality of the Zhao family's door was indeed good, and he didn't smash it directly with this palm. Without paying attention to what the old man said, he raised his right leg under the fearful eyes and kicked the old man's chest again. Crackling. This time, the huge wooden door behind him burst open, and two bodies flew into the Qingtai Mountain Road. The old man and the young man passed out immediately, their slightly twisted bodies lying on the stone steps, blood slowly flowing down the steps. Zhao Yunji was also frightened by this scene and looked at Zhou Daocheng in disbelief. Zhou Daocheng looked calm, groped for Zhao Yunji's stiff body, took out a silk handkerchief from his inner pocket, and wiped his blood-stained right hand unhurriedly. As if aware of the gaze, he explained in a calm voice, he is not targeting you, but targeting you and your father's lineage, and even more so, my Zhou family. Go and see your parents, otherwise you can't leave today with peace of mind. Quote. Zhao Yunji looked stunned, as if he had figured something out. Thank you, I'm just so angry. Zhou Daocheng shook his head slightly, indicating that it was okay, and then casually crumpled the silk handkerchief into a ball. He was about to stuff it back into Zhao Yunji's pocket, but Zhao Yunji glared at it angrily and slapped it away. I have it. Don't stuff it back, it's all blood. Zhou Daocheng could only smile. As the mountain gate was broken, the Zhao family monks were also disturbed. In just a few minutes, dozens of figures came flying from the mountain. Who dares to trespass on the Zhao family's territory? Looking at the people who came, Zhou Daocheng's expression did not change much. The Zhao family was only a qi refining family, and the strongest was only at the 9th level of qi refining. Zhou Daocheng believed that even without the use of formations, a strong person at the 9th level of qi refining could not injure himself. If you use the formation, things may be simpler, but the subsequent cleaning work will be slower. After all, in order to cover up the formation, he might have to get rid of everyone present. Naturally, he was fine. He was just worried that Zhao Yunji would not agree. If there was a conflict, it would affect the accumulation of his innate purple energy, and the gain would outweigh the loss. And looking at it now, the few people who came here were only at the 8th level of qi refining, so there was really no need to be nervous. The monks from the Zhao family stepped forward. When they saw Zhou Daocheng and Zhao Yunji, their expressions changed, and there was a hint of coldness between their brows. Zhou Daocheng was keenly aware, and a trace of doubt arose in his heart. Why did the Zhao family's attitude change so quickly? Logically speaking, it was the Zhou family's help that preserved the inheritance of the Zhao family when the family was in danger. Zhao Yunji sacrificed for the family and was a hero of the family. Why is this happening now? The leader of the 8th level qi refining man looked at Zhou Daocheng with wary eyes, as if he did not dare to offend easily. Then, he set his target on Zhao Yunji and said coldly, Zhao Yunji, what do you mean? You can't bring the Zhou family to destroy your own family. Zhao Yunji's expression was complicated, and he did not want to say anything more. He said directly, Third brother, I went back to the Zhao family to visit relatives, but I don't know why I was blocked from the door. Is it their own initiative, or is it my father's intention? Zhao Yunshan's expression changed slightly, and he probably understood what happened. Out of fear of Zhou Daocheng, he could only say coldly. Third uncle has taken the initiative to step down as the head of the family. During his reign, he made many wrong decisions, which caused the family's power to decline and suffered great humiliation. He is a disgrace to the family and is unworthy of being the head of the Zhao family. Zhou Daocheng frowned. It was puzzling that the Zhou family was completely unaware of such a huge change in the Zhao family. Zhao Yunji didn't want to say anything and asked, Where is my father now? You should go and meet the current head of the family first. Are you deaf? Zhou Daocheng interrupted impatiently, and the thick Wutu spiritual energy crushed him. Zhao Yunshan paused, couldn't help but take 2 steps back, and looked at Zhou Daocheng in shock. He was surprised to find that he could not see Zhou Daocheng's strength at all. Just now I thought that the other party was just using special means to cover it up, so I couldn't see clearly. But now that I felt the terrifying aura in person, I immediately changed my mind. It can make the 8th level of qi refining invisible, and the spiritual energy is so solidified that he can't think of any other possibility except the 9th level of qi refining. No. Impossible. You were clearly at the 6th level of qi refining before. How could you break through to the 9th level of qi refining in such a short period of time? Zhou Daocheng frowned and took a step forward, his breath becoming firmer. Perhaps his attack methods are indeed seriously inadequate, but in terms of the thickness and solidity of the spiritual energy and the oppressive feeling of the aura, not even the 9th level of qi refining dares to compete. This is the huge gap brought about by the 3rd level high-grade skills. The huge sense of threat made Zhao Yunshan swallow his saliva, and he could only say, in the back mountain yard. Zhao Yunji's face was uncertain. My father is from the former family. Even if he abdicates now, how can you arrange for him to live in the back mountain? This is the head of the family's decision. Who are the contemporary families? Second uncle. Zhao Yunji's chest was rising and falling, and his eyes were full of dissatisfaction. Zhou Daocheng patted her shoulder. Let's go and see what the situation is. As his breath calmed down, Zhou Daocheng took Zhao Yunji directly up the mountain. Along the way, there were many Zhao family monks, whispering in low voices that made people frown. Why did she come back? The one next to her is from the Zhou family's Dao generation, right? Tisk tisk, marrying a younger generation child for the sake of profit is really eye-opening. At the beginning, the former head of the family flattered his face and insisted on giving his daughter to Zhou Shorong, the first person of the Shou generation of the Zhou family. Hee, do you know what the result was? There is such a thing. What happened in the end? Tisk tisk, in the end, he didn't want it. In the end, he gave it to an unknown junior of the Tao generation as a concubine. Being a concubine, what's the difference between this and a mortal woman entering a brothel? Humph, it's just shameless, it's simply a disgrace to my Zhao family. The ancestral home should be completely expelled. How can such a person be allowed to come back? Alas, Zhao Yunji and his daughter are really sinners of the Zhao family. If the head of the family was Chengchuan at that time, why would the Zhao family be insulted like this? Quote. Zhao Yunji's face was pale. She never thought that she was willing to swallow her anger for the sake of the family and give up her bright future as a tool for marriage, and the final result was actually like this. Zhou Daocheng also frowned. The spread of such information could not have happened spontaneously. There must be a big hand behind it. Combined with the fact that Zhao Yunji's father was dismissed from the position of head of the family and was pushed to the edge of the family, Zhou Daocheng was more certain that the Zhao family must have undergone unexpected changes. All the way to the back mountain, I saw 5 or 6 small houses in the distance. They were dilapidated and messy, and they did not look like the residences of immortal cultivators. Moreover, the soil nearby is extremely hard yellow sand and gravel, making it impossible to grow lingu vegetables. Moreover, the quality of the spiritual veins here is not very good. Although it has barely reached the first level of high-quality management through the Zhao family, the area covered is very small, and the spiritual energy in the back mountain is almost non-existent. The two frowned and walked forward. They saw a figure in the distance, picking a very low-quality plant called dogtail millet. It can grow even in soil with extremely harsh conditions, but the taste is extremely difficult to swallow. Can barely satisfy hunger. Zhao Yunji walked forward quickly and called out, "Third ant." The figure paused and turned around to look. When he saw Zhou Daocheng and Zhao Yunji, a complex expression of surprise and embarrassment appeared on his face. About a few minutes later, 7 or 8 people gathered in a larger, dilapidated room. The scene in front of him made Zhou Daocheng frown. The families living in the back mountain were exactly the same group of people with the former head of the family, Zhao Chengshan, as the core. It can be seen that these people are not weak in strength, and many of them have reached the late stage of qi refining, but they seem to be seriously injured, so their aura is sluggish. Father, what happened? Why did it turn into this? Zhao Yunji's eyes moved slightly. Zhao Chengshan has a withered face, dark skin and wrinkles. He has the strength of the 9th level of qi refining, but he coughs slightly from time to time and is very weak in spirit. When he heard the question, he couldn't help but smile bitterly and told the reason of the matter. Ahem, I am also responsible for this matter. I was forced to seek refuge with the Zhou family due to pressure from the Ma family. However, the head of the Zhou family was so clever that not only did I not get any benefits, but he also made you humiliate me. Being forced to marry a junior of the Zhou family made the family elders and clan members very dissatisfied and felt that it was a disgrace to the family. Quote. Ahem. Zhou Daocheng coughed twice, indicating that he, the rightful owner, was still here. Why would marrying him be a disgrace to the family? Zhao Chengshan smiled awkwardly and looked at Zhou Daocheng carefully. It had to be said that this was the first time the two met. After just 2 glances, Zhao Chengshan couldn't help but let out a sigh, and there was a glint in his eyes. As the previous head of the Zhao family, he had good experience and vision. Naturally, he could see that Zhou Daocheng's strength was extraordinary, and it was difficult for even him to see clearly. What shocked him even more was that this man's movements were extraordinary, and his aura had a hint of weight, which made people dare not underestimate him. If he hadn't often been in high positions, he might also have suffered from stage fright. Such a magnanimity would not be unusual if it appeared in a family leader who had gone through many vicissitudes of life, but it would be a bit surprising if it appeared in a junior. Even Zhou Daocheng himself was not aware of this. During this year at Balin Lake, as the leader of Meng Yushan and other 8-level qi refining experts, he gradually developed a bit of the magnanimity of a superior person, showing dignity in his every move. Coupled with the 3rd-level high-grade skill, Wutu Kunyu Gong, he practiced, his overall aura became thicker and more steady, and even Zhao Chengshan felt the pressure. Zhao Chengshan couldn't help but nodded slightly and said with a hint of approval, I have long heard that among the Zhou family's Taoist generation, the eldest brother Zhou Daobai has the strongest talent in cultivation, and the old Cici Daoqi is good at refining weapons. He is the family's key training target, and the others pale in comparison. However, I never thought that you, Daocheng, are no ordinary person. Zhou Daocheng is not an immature child, so he is naturally not affected by this flattery. He said calmly, "Thank you. Compared with the eldest brother and the fourth brother, I, Zhou Daocheng, am insignificant. I am a little surprised. As a member of the Zhao family, even if you have some decision-making a few mistakes, but it won't end like this, right?" Hearing this, Zhao Chengxian first nodded in approval, then looked slightly disappointed and continued. "What I said is indeed true. Even if my reign has led to the decline of the family, I am still the head of the family and the only 9th level qi refining expert in the Zhao family. Then why is this happening? The second uncle is only at the 8th level of qi refining, how can he control the family?" Zhao Yunji was also very puzzled. Hearing this question, Zhao Chengxian showed a wry smile and said, "If you want to be the head of the Zhao family, the 8th level of qi refining is naturally not strong enough, but your second uncle is also somewhat capable. He successfully broke through to the 9th level of qi refining half a year ago and won over many family elders impeached me." Zhao Yunji frowned and said, "Are you going to give up the position of head of the family?" Zhao Chengxian showed a bitter smile. "What if I don't give in? There are constant rumors in the family. The people have long been tired of my weakness and incompetence. What they need is a head of the family who can lead the family to glory." Zhao Yunji couldn't help but said, "But it was you, my father, who led the family out of the predicament and revitalized the family with sericulture technology. Did they forget so quickly?" "Maybe I forgot, maybe I didn't forget, who cares?" Zhao Chengxian's eyes dimmed and he said, "No matter how glorious it was, the decline of the Zhao family in the later period is an indisputable fact. Someone has to bear the fault, isn't it?" Zhao Yunji was silent and didn't say a word for a long time. Zhou Daocheng nodded silently when he heard this. Since he is sitting in the position of the head of the family, exercising the authority of the family head and controlling the rise and fall of a family, he should bear the final result regardless of success or failure. This is responsibility. Regardless of personal ability, since the Zhao family has reached this stage, Zhao Chengxian must bear the responsibility as the head of the family. After a long silence, Zhao Yunji couldn't help but ask, "What happened to your injury? Could it be that it was also caused by second uncle?" Zhao Chengxian just smiled and shook his head. "When the family moved half a year ago, I was attacked by bandits by accident and was unfortunately seriously injured, so I resigned from the position of head of the family and moved to the back mountain to recuperate." The plain words contain a lot of information. Such a coincidence to encounter bandits, and such a coincidence to be seriously injured, and even being driven to the back mountain where spiritual energy is scarce and resources are barren. How could there be such a coincidence if there is no big hand secretly operating? Zhao Yunji could naturally hear it, and said with anger, "Second uncle actually acted like this, really without any blood relationship. Ahem. Don't blame him, as the new head of the family. He needs to establish prestige by suppressing me, and it is also necessary to completely remove my confidence. For the development of the family, this is beneficial. Ahem." Zhou Daocheng listened silently, and also had a deeper understanding of the character of this father-in-law. As the former head of the Zhao family, perhaps he does have some means and abilities, but these means and abilities are very limited. He lacks a ruthless heart and tends to be weak. These are all facts that are laid bare. For having come to this point, perhaps no one else can be blamed. While thinking, footsteps suddenly came from outside the window, and a group of people were seen walking from a distance. The person who came was tall and dressed in gorgeous brocade clothes. He looked somewhat similar to Zhao Chengxian, but there was a hint of gloom and anger between his brows. Seeing the person coming, Zhao Chengxian couldn't help but change his face slightly, and said in a slightly low voice, "Chengxuan, Yunji just came back to visit relatives. What do you want to do with a large group of people here?" Zhao Chengxuan didn't care about Zhao Chengxian at all. He walked up quickly with a smile, bowed respectfully, and said in a flattering tone, "Zhao Chengxuan of the Zhao family has met the young master of the Zhou family. Master, please apologize." Then, he looked at Zhao Yunji with pretense of complaint and said, "Yunji, Mr. Zhou family is coming to visit. You don't even know to inform me, so that the family can prepare in advance. You see, the temporary preparations now may have to be made. Poor hospitality." Zhou Daocheng raised his eyebrows slightly, secretly thinking that this man was really sophisticated and smooth, and his personality was completely opposite to that of Zhao Chengxian. No wonder he could become the head of the Zhao family within a year. Come on, Mr. Zhou, the environment here is not good. Follow me back to the main hall of the Zhao family. I have prepared a banquet. Please forgive me if the reception is not good. As he said that, Zhao Chengxuan smiled and made an invitation. Faced with such a situation, Zhou Daocheng just glanced at this person unhurriedly and was not dazzled by a series of sugar-coated bullets. With such a flattering attitude, how could Zhou Daocheng not see what the other party meant? But Zhou Daocheng is by no means a playboy, and he naturally has a scale in his heart. Facing the invitation, Zhou Daocheng had no expression on his face and showed no intention of moving his legs. He just looked at the middle-aged man in front of him coldly, which made Zhao Chengxuan's hair stand on end. Zhao Chengxuan observed his words and asked tentatively, I wonder what you need, sir. Just tell me. I will do my best to complete it. Zhou Daocheng snorted coldly, looked at Zhao Chengxuan indifferently, and said calmly, Your Excellency, there is no need to pretend, but you should explain to me why I, Zhou Jiahao, don't know about the change of head of the Zhao family. Hearing this, Zhao Chengxuan frowned vaguely and secretly thought that today's matter was troublesome. He thought he could get through with just a few words, but he never expected that the junior Zhou family in front of him was so sharp and immediately noticed what he was most worried about. Sir, this is what happened. Zhao Chengxuan was sweating slightly on his forehead. Just as he was about to explain, he was directly interrupted by Zhou Daocheng. HMPH, the Zhao family, as a vassal of my Zhou family, lives in the territory of my Zhou family and is protected by my Zhou family. However, such an important matter as changing the head of the family was not reported to the Zhou family. Zhou Daocheng's face was as cold as a cold pool, and his voice gradually became louder. Whose idea is this matter? Is it to cause trouble under the eyes of my Zhou family? The cold words pierced the thoughts of everyone present. Whether it was Zhao Chengxian or Zhao Chengxuan, their hearts stagnated and their breathing became a little heavier. What Zhou Daocheng said was serious enough to convict the Zhao family of ulterior motives and deliberate rebellion. There are also rules in the world of immortality. Since small forces choose to surrender, they will lose part of their sovereignty and need to be controlled by powerful forces. One of the most important points is that the abolition of the speaker is reflected in the replacement of the head of the family. From the beginning to the end, the Zhou family recognized the head of the family as Zhao Chengxian, and had always been in contact with Zhao Chengxian. Zhao Chengxian was equivalent to the Zhou family's representative in the Zhao family, and was the person who truly had rights. However, without the permission of the Zhou family, the Zhao family actually changed the head of the family, and the Zhou family actually had no knowledge of such an important matter. This matter can be big or small. At the very least, I just forgot to report it. At the most serious level, can we directly conclude that you, Zhao Chengxuan, are dissatisfied with the Zhou family and trying to rebel? When Zhou Daocheng pointed out the key point of the matter, Zhao Chengxuan broke into a cold sweat and was even more surprised. He didn't expect the young man in front of him to be so sensitive. Sir, please don't misunderstand me. I, Zhao Chengxuan, have absolutely no such intention. The replacement of the head of the family is also a joint decision within the family. It's just that I have been too busy these days and forgot to report to the Zhou family. Zhou Daocheng took a step forward, his eyes were sharp, and he shouted sternly, Do you think I will believe it? Do you think my Zhou family will believe it? Zhao Chengxian is recognized by my Zhou family as the head of the Zhao family. It is your turn to replace him. Zhao Chengxuan looked ugly and didn't know how to answer for a moment. Zhou Daocheng continued. Zhao Yunji belongs to me, Zhou Daocheng, and even more so to my Zhou family. If you let the rumors go unchecked, are you scolding our Zhou family for being shameless and shameless? The sound became louder and louder, like vibrating thunder that echoed in the ears, struck in the heart, and made people shudder. Zhao Chengxuan turned even pale and hurriedly denied, No, no. I don't dare. Young master, you have misunderstood. How could our Zhao family do such a thing? I hope young master will learn from it. On the side, Zhao Chengxian also noticed that something was wrong and hurriedly walked forward. Daocheng, Chengxuan really has no intention of this, and I took the initiative to give up my position when changing the head of the family. When Zhou Daocheng heard this, the corner of his mouth suddenly twitched, and he looked at the cheap father-in-law speechlessly. This sudden and untimely explanation almost ruined everything Zhou Daocheng had planned. He understood at this moment that it was no wonder that he had reached this point. With such a weak character and unable to clearly see the situation, he was indeed not the head of the family. Zhao Chengquan keenly seized the opportunity and climbed up the pole. Yes, it is indeed the eldest brother who took the initiative to give up his position. I also couldn't bear the family to be in dire straits, so I took on this responsibility. Zhou Daocheng's forehead veins twitched and he said, "You are just trying to fool your elder brother with your words. Do you really think that I, Zhou Daocheng, am a fool? Don't dare." Zhou Daocheng already understood that it should be impossible to use this reason to convict Zhao Chengquan today. On the one hand, Zhao Chengquan has broken the momentum accumulated before and gave Zhao Chengquan a chance to breathe. And to put it bluntly, Zhao Chengquan is a master at the 9th level of qi refining after all. What he fears is never Zhou Daocheng, but the Zhou family behind him. If he is pushed too hard, no one knows what the outcome will be. Zhou Daocheng's eyes flickered, thinking about the appropriate way to deal with it. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind. Zhou Daocheng took a step forward and approached Zhao Chengquan. This matter is not a small matter, but it always needs a suitable solution. I don't know if the Zhao family leader wants to solve it here, or go to my uncle's place to solve it. When Zhao Chengquan heard this, his eyes flickered slightly, and he heard the hint of concession in the words, so he hurriedly said, "The head of the Zhou family has many things to do, so there is no need to trouble him at this time." Zhou Daocheng nodded slightly and said, "I don't care about other people. Zhao Chengquan is the person chosen by my Zhou family to talk about the matter, and Zhao Yunji is my Zhou Daocheng's woman. They cannot suffer losses for no reason, do you understand?" "This, I understand." Zhao Chengquan gritted his teeth and immediately understood what the person in front of him meant. He was trying to trick himself. Either pay the money and the matter will end there, if not, the head of the Zhou family will judge it himself. Zhao Chengquan knew that this matter must not become a big deal. He had seen the head of the Zhou family with his own eyes. He was a man with deep thoughts and ruthless methods. I am afraid that he would never hold back in dealing with this matter, and the consequences would only be worse. After thinking about it like this, Zhao Chengquan gritted his teeth and said, "Sir, I am indeed at fault for this matter. I can compensate you with a sum of spiritual stones. I don't know what amount you think is appropriate." Zhou Daocheng thought about it and said, 5,000 spirit stones. 5,000. Zhao Chengquan's eyes widened and he looked at the young man in front of him in disbelief. He never expected that the young man had such a big appetite. "Sir, I'm afraid this number is too much. Our Zhao family is just a small qi refining clan, so I'm afraid we can't afford it. This is your Zhao Chengquan's business. If you can handle it, this matter will be settled. If you can't handle it, huh." At this moment, an untimely and honest voice sounded. "Daocheng's son-in-law, I don't think Chengquan did it intentionally, and 5,000 spirit stones is indeed too much. How about you let him go this time?" There was silence for 3 seconds. Several people's faces turned red, including Zhou Daocheng, who looked like he had eaten shit, and the veins on his forehead couldn't stop pulsing. Zhao Yunji couldn't help but hold his forehead, his chest heaved deeply, obviously he was very angry. Zhao Chengquan is also full of black threads. He is obviously trying to give me a leg up and wants to resolve it peacefully, but why the hell are you trying to get involved? Immediately afterwards, Zhou Daocheng, Zhao Yunji, and Zhao Chengquan almost said in unison. "You shut up." Zhao Chengquan was so frightened that he took a step back. "You guys." Zhao Yunji couldn't bear it anymore. He grabbed his father and said with an apologetic look, "Daocheng, I'm sorry to bother you. I will kill my relatives right away. You are busy with your business." When Zhao Chengquan was forcibly taken away, Zhou Daocheng breathed a sigh of relief, looked at Zhao Chengquan and said, "We can continue." Zhao Chengquan also felt relieved, remained silent for a moment, gritted his teeth and said, 5,000 spirit stones, that's fine, just 5,000 spirit stones. I hope that the young master will keep his promise and this matter will be over. I, Zhao Chengquan, am by no means a person with ulterior motives. I hope young master can rest assured." Zhou Daocheng glanced at him meaningfully, and was secretly surprised. 5,000 spirit stones was not a small amount, especially for a small qi refining family like the Zhao family, which might have been accumulated over several years. Being able to tell this number is enough to show Zhao Chengquan's courage. After deliberation for a few seconds, Zhou Daocheng remained calm and simply replied, "I, Zhou Daocheng, always speak my mind, and that ends here." Zhao Chengquan breathed a sigh of relief and looked at the young man in front of him with slight approval. Unexpectedly, facing the huge wealth of 5,000 spirit stones, this man did not even blink. This made him even more certain that the humble junior from the Zhou family with a Dao name in front of him was definitely extraordinary, which made him secretly curse the information for being inaccurate. Originally, I thought that the two most outstanding people of the Zhou Jiadao generation were Zhou Daobai and Zhou Daoqi, but now it seems that is definitely not the case. The Zhou Daocheng in front of me is actually even more extraordinary. As a strong man at the 9th level of qi refining, he could vaguely feel Zhou Daocheng's terrifying strength. Although he could not fully detect it, from the aura revealed, he knew that the young man in front of him was a strong man who was not weaker than him. At least this is true from the perspective of the strength of the spiritual energy. It is extremely thick and long, no worse than the 9th level of qi refining. Not only was his strength extremely terrifying, his demeanor and temperament were also far beyond those of his peers, which made him secretly surprised, and at the same time he couldn't help but be envious. Among the descendants of the Zhou family, there were so many talented people at the same time, while the Zhao family only had a bunch of people with nothing but wine and rice bags. The difference was really huge. At the same time, a question suddenly appeared in his mind: why didn't the head of the Zhou family marry Zhao Yunji to the generation Shuzi? Didn't you marry two Taoist geniuses? Instead, he chose Zhou Daocheng, who seemed to have ordinary qualifications. Is it really a deliberate attempt to humiliate the Zhao family? Or maybe they think Zhao Yunji is not worthy of them. A dignified genius with two spiritual roots, excellent appearance and talents, there is a high probability that this is not the reason. There can only be one real reason. Zhou Daocheng, the true number one of the Zhou family, has talents and abilities that are not weaker than Zhao Yunji and can truly suppress Zhao Yunji. And judging from today's situation, Zhao Yunji was indeed suppressed to death, without any arrogance of a genius with two spiritual roots, and followed Zhou Daocheng like an ordinary little daughter-in-law. With all the doubts in his mind cleared, Zhao Chengquan looked at Zhou Daocheng with even more respect. Zhou Daocheng naturally doesn't know what Zhao Chengquan is thinking, but even if he knew, he would only give him 4 big words: "You think too much." Marrying someone of the Dao generation was because the family leader had confused the seniority. Marrying him, Zhou Daocheng, was because he was afraid that Zhao Yunji would affect the better Dao Qi and Dao Bai, that's all. Tens of minutes later, Zhao Chengquan found a storage bag on the ground. Zhou Daocheng took a casual look and saw the neatly arranged spiritual stones, emitting a bright light, which made people's hearts flutter. Forget it, this matter is over. Zhou Daocheng did not stay long, and left the Zhao family directly without even caring about Zhao Chengquan and others. No matter from which aspect, there was no need for him to have too much respect for Zhao Chengquan. There was a big difference in status, and Zhao Chengquan's weak and incompetent character also made Zhou Daocheng unable to have any respect. Even for Zhao Yunji, the relationship with his father was not deep. When he was young, Zhao Chengquan devoted all his energy to the family and lacked care for the family, which led to the death of Zhao Yunji's mother in an accident. Later, due to various decision-making errors, Zhao Yunji, who did not protect the second spiritual root, was forced by the Ma family and finally had to sell his daughter to survive. No wonder the Zhao family cultivators would pull him down and choose the more shrewd and decisive Zhao Chengquan. All the way back to the Zhou family. Zhou Daocheng did not return to Balan Lake directly, but looked at the storage bag full of spiritual stones, with a lot of thoughts in his mind. After hesitating for a long time, he still walked towards the inner hall of the family. Standing outside the door, Zhou Daocheng frowned, and after thinking for a long time in his heart, he knocked on the door. "Who is it?" The voice was long and heavy, with unparalleled majesty. "Grandfather, it's me, Daocheng." He can act recklessly in the Zhao family, but in the Zhou family, especially in front of the Zhou family patriarch, he is still a little scared. On the one hand, because of his own blood and memory, he has a natural sense of awe. On the other hand, it is also because the means and submission of the Zhou family patriarch are by no means comparable to Zhao Chengquan and Zhao Chengshan, and the difference is far more than one level. Zhou Chengyi was sitting in the center of the hall, with smoke rising from the incense burner beside him, and the scroll in his hand was gently flipping, and a peaceful voice sounded. What do you want to see the great-grandfather for? Didn't the trip to the Zhao family go smoothly? Zhou Daocheng was stunned and couldn't help but smile bitterly. Before he said it, the matter had been guessed. This great-grandfather was really extraordinary. So he didn't hide it and roughly told the situation of the Zhao family. After listening, Zhou Chengyi frowned slightly. Zhao Chengshan. Zhao Chengquan, I didn't expect this to happen. It was indeed my negligence. But since you took the initiative to find me, it seems that the matter has been dealt with almost. Zhou Daocheng nodded, organized his words, and said, I asked Zhao Chengquan to bribe me 5,000 spirit stones and promised him that this matter would end here. 5,000 spirit stones. Zhou Chengyi's face changed slightly when he heard this number. Even for the Zhou family, this is definitely not a small number. Daocheng, since you have made a decision, why did you come to Grandpa? Zhou Daocheng pondered for a moment, a cold light appeared in his eyes. Humph, how can it end here? But due to his status as a 9th-level Qi refining, it is not easy to compete with him directly, so I have to resort to this last resort. 5,000 spirit stones, if he can't take it out, just take this opportunity to warn his Zhao family, so as not to cause these moths. If he really takes out 5,000 spirit stones, then there is really a problem. Zhou Chengyi looked at his grandson thoughtfully, with a meaningful look in his eyes. He was a little surprised and asked with some consideration, Oh, what do you mean? Zhou Daocheng raised his drooping eyes and said, The Zhao family has been oppressed by the Ma family for many years, and many industries have been destroyed. The family is unable to make ends meet and can't even pay the family salaries. Moreover, half a year ago, they moved to our Zhou family area and spent a lot of money. If under such circumstances, he, the Zhao family, can come up with 5,000 spirit stones, which means that he must have a big problem. Zhou Chengyi listened, his dim eyes brightened a little, and a cautious look appeared between his eyebrows, and he also noticed the abnormality. So, Daocheng, what do you mean? Although Zhao Chengshan is weak and incompetent, he is easier to control and is beneficial to our Zhou family. Zhao Chengquan is too sophisticated and smooth, and is a disaster. Zhou Chengyi stared at Zhou Daocheng with a hint of surprise in his eyes, as if he cared more about his grandson than the affairs of the Zhao family. Daocheng, you are very good. Zhou Chengyi looked deep in his eyes and praised sincerely after a long time. It seemed that for the first time, he really knew this inconspicuous grandson. Zhou Daocheng was slightly surprised. In his memory, this great-grandfather was always serious. He didn't expect that his great-grandfather would praise people. It was really rare. However, he didn't care too much, because his mind was now completely on the 5,000 spirit stones in his pocket. Before he decided to report the matter, Zhou Daocheng had been hesitating. This was a full 5,000 spirit stones. If he really had to hand it over completely, he would be reluctant. However, after hesitating for a moment, he still took out the storage bag from his pocket and handed it over with gritted teeth. Grandpa, this is 3,000 spirit stones. 3,000, Zhou Chengyi said with approval in Soviet eyes. Didn't you say 5,000 just now? Ahem, Grandpa, the wind was strong on the way back, and the wind broke the storage bag, and I lost 2,000. Zhou Daocheng said with a straight face and a calm heart. Zhou Chengyi twitched his lips, looking at Zhou Daocheng with a serious face, and felt that his forehead was full of black lines. Whose storage is this? The quality is so poor. Grandpa will take you to ask for an explanation. Ahem, there is no need to be so troublesome. Well, the storage bag was blown open, and the items inside fell into the space turbulence. There is nothing we can do about it, but it happened that 2,000 pieces were lost, which is really strange. Zhou Daocheng widened his eyes and said, Grandpa, you should know my character. I have always been resolute and upright, and I am frank. I never lie to others. Zhou Chengyi couldn't help but pursed his lips and looked at this grandson with thick eyebrows and big eyes, quite helpless. You also fooled Zhao Chengquan in this way. Did he believe it? Believed it. Well, this matter is originally for you to solve. Take the 2,000 spirit stones. Zhou Chengyi smiled bitterly and shook his head helplessly. He couldn't control this grandson for a while, so he had to let go. Zhou Daocheng smiled happily, bowed respectfully, and then said goodbye and left directly, fearing that the master would regret it. Originally, handing over 3,000 spirit stones was enough to make him feel distressed, but this was also a helpless move. The affairs of the Zhao family must not be treated as a joke. Once some accidents happen, destroying the Zhao family is a small matter, but affecting the Zhou family will be troublesome. Moreover, as a vassal of the Zhou family, the Zhao family originally belonged to the family. It was appropriate for him to take 2,000 spirit stones. If he took all of them, it would be unreasonable. Watching Zhou Daocheng leave with satisfaction, Zhou Chengyi sighed silently, this kid. Don't let my Zhou family's style go astray. But the affairs of the Zhao family should be taken seriously. When talking about the Zhao family, the originally peaceful face suddenly showed a trace of ruthlessness. The eyes hidden in the shadows became deeper. After a long while, Zhou Chengyi suddenly sighed and said slowly, Uncle San, I can't seem to understand Daocheng. A few seconds later, an old man walked out of the shadows behind the hall. His temples were gray due to the erosion of time, but his posture was unusually upright, and his aura was as vast as the abyss, giving people an unshakable feeling. This person is the real pillar of the Zhou family in Tianqi Mountain, the only elder of the Yang generation, a third-level foundation building expert, and the current patriarch of the Zhou family. Zhou Yonghan walked out slowly, his eyes drooping calmly, and after coughing twice, he said, the Dao generation has indeed produced several extraordinary children. Before, there was Dao Bai Daoqi, and now Daocheng has shown extraordinary talent and determination. This is really God's blessing for my Zhou family. Zhou Chengyi couldn't help but sigh. Daocheng is a child. I watched him grow up. Although he was mature and sophisticated since he was a child. But he didn't really enter my field of vision. It's just that in the recent period of time, he suddenly changed a lot. It seems that, after he became a Taoist partner with the Zhao family girl. Ahem, maybe he is hiding his shortcomings, maybe he is awakening, everything changes. The human heart is even more treacherous, who can really see through it? Quote. Zhou Chengyi looked up sadly at the words, looking at the misty Tianqi mountain outside the window, his cold eyes revealed tenderness, and he couldn't help asking. Then, Patriarch, who do you think can lead the Zhou family in this generation of Dao characters and lead the family for the next thousands of years? Zhou Yonghan stood with his hands behind his back, and a smile appeared on his wrinkled face. If you can't tell, then keep watching. We old men will support the family for a few more years, and it's time to hand everything over to the children. Then, he sighed again and couldn't help but sigh. It's a pity that none of the Shuzi generation can take the lead. I hope that the Daozi generation can grow up as soon as possible. Yes, Dao Bai, Dao Qi and Daocheng are each stationed on one side. They have shown extraordinary abilities. They are now no longer weaker than some seniors. That's good, old man, it's almost time. Third uncle, you should return to the cave as soon as possible to cultivate. I will ask the tribe to buy some heavenly materials and earthly treasures that extend lifespan. No need, there is no need to waste spiritual stones on me. I am going to buy the foundation establishment pill within 3 years. It is time to pass it on to the family. 3 days later, Jiaojia Qingtai Mountain. A scream breaks the calm of dawn. Then, 3 low death knells rang, echoing throughout the entire platform mountain. All the Zhao family members who heard the sound woke up from their sleep and rushed to the family hall. This kind of bell is imprinted deep in the heart of every clan member. It will only be rung when an important family member dies. 3 bells ring, which means the death of a family leader or patriarch. The impact on a family is undoubtedly devastating. It would be fine if he died of old age, but all the Zhao family members knew in their hearts that the current head of the Zhao family was only in his prime, so how could he die of old age? When other clan members arrived, the room of the family leader Zhao Chengquan had been completely sealed off. All the clan elders who witnessed the scene looked gloomy and extremely ugly. They knew the situation was far more serious than they imagined. In just one night, without everyone knowing, the head of the family in the core area of the Zhao family died tragically without any sign of struggle. This is one of the 2 strongest people of this generation in the Zhao family who has reached the 9th level of qi refining. If they want him to die quietly, who should take action? They know that even a strong person who fails to break through the foundation building and reaches the 9th level of weapon refining will definitely not be able to achieve this level. There is only one possibility for the murderer, and that is the foundation building period. This put a heavy layer of gloom in everyone's heart. On that day, all the clan elders held a discussion that lasted all day, and finally made only one decision. The previous head of the family, Zhao Chengxian, will continue to take over as the head of the family. However, even if such a decision is made, all the Zhao family members still remain distant, disdainful, and even resistant to Zhao Chengxian, the head of the family. Just because everyone doesn't say it doesn't mean everyone is a fool. Why was Zhao Chengxian killed? Who was he killed by? What did the murderer want to achieve? No one dares to answer these questions, but everyone's mind is like a mirror. The Zhao family already had their own answer in mind, and made the final decision based on the outcome the other party wanted. Zhao Chengxian did not feel any joy when he sat back as the master of the family. Instead, his face was full of sorrow and helplessness. He understood that after this incident, there was an irreparable gap between himself and his tribe, and he himself was just a puppet after all. What made him even more sad was that the young man was so decisive and ruthless and had no intention of letting Zhao Chengxian go, which made him feel scared. Zhou Daocheng has already embarked on the journey back to Balan Lake. He doesn't know what happened to the Zhao family, but even if he knew, it wouldn't be too surprising. Now that he has reported the matter to the head of the family, he has been mentally prepared. Keeping someone like Zhao Chengxian is really a time bomb, so it is better to clean it up as soon as possible. Daocheng, it's getting dark. Let's find a place to stay for the night. Zhao Yunji looked at the environment. It was close to the uninhabited mountains, covered with dense forests, and most of the area was undeveloped primitive mountains. Even though they had been on the road several times, the two of them still did not dare to be careless and would choose to camp on the spot every night. Zhou Daocheng nodded. Well, just to be safe, let's have a night's rest. The two cooperated tacitly, looking for a suitable cave to spend the night, and hunting monsters for food. However, after Zhou Daocheng explored the surroundings, he couldn't help but frown, with a vague premonition in his heart. Yunji, do you feel anything strange? Zhao Yunji frowned slightly when he heard this, stopped what he was doing, and after careful inspection, he didn't notice it, and asked, No, what's wrong? Zhou Daocheng did not let down his guard. The characteristics of Wutu Kun Yu Gong gave him a sharper perception in the wild environment. No, there's the smell of blood in the air. Zhou Daocheng's eyes were sharp, and with his keen perception, he quickly locked in a direction. The earth-yellow magic power emerged from his body, and he grabbed the golden Jade Vine formation array plate in his hand, ready to take action at any time. Seeing this situation, Zhao Yunji did not dare to be careless and quickly put himself on guard. Yunji, I remember when I passed by here before, there seemed to be a small qi refining family nearby, right? Zhao Yunji looked thoughtful and said, There is indeed a small family nearby. I have met their hunting team before, but I don't know the location of their family's residence. Zhou Daocheng frowned, thought for a moment and then said, Go over and take a look, there may be something going on. Deliberately lowering his footsteps, he quickly shuttled through the darkness, relying on the faint light of the luminous stone to grope in the direction from which the smell of blood came. After walking for several miles, Zhao Yunji's eyes narrowed slightly. At this distance, she could also clearly feel the smell of blood in the air. Although it is very light, it is extremely vivid. Zhou Daocheng also became more and more sure of his guess. The smell of blood wafted from a very far away place and he could still detect it, which was enough to show that the amount of blood was huge. After walking about 10 kilometers, a flash of fire suddenly appeared in the dense jungle. The smell of blood in the air was extremely strong, mixed with weak spiritual energy flowing into the nose. Peeling away from the jungle, a scene of a run-down family appeared in front of them. This should be a small qi refining family, similar to Zhao Yunji's Zhao family, which occupies a small first-level mid-level spiritual vein and lives in this mountain range. But at this moment, a large number of houses and buildings collapsed, and the palaces that were not tall and prosperous had been turned into ruins, burning in the fire and making crackling sounds. Under the reflection of the burning flames, the crimson blood on the ground flowed like a river, soaking the grass, trees and stones on the mountain, creating a scene of purgatory on earth. Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but turn pale when he saw this scene, and Zhao Yunji couldn't bear to look directly at it with his eyes closed. Is this the destruction of an entire family? Who is so cruel that he would do such an unconscionable thing? Zhou Daocheng's eyes were deep and he felt a chill on his back. In this situation, there were probably only two possibilities. Either he is an enemy seeking revenge, or he is an evil cultivator. After a brief observation, Zhou Daocheng preferred the latter. Because not only were all the immortal cultivators left, but even the ordinary mortals under the mountain were slaughtered. This was definitely not something an enemy could do if they were seeking revenge. Moreover, he vaguely discovered that most of the corpses had disappeared, leaving only blood on the ground. This was also a method only used by evil cultivators. Daocheng, do you want to go over and see if there are any survivors? Zhou Daocheng shook his head and did not make a rash decision. Instead, he hid in the dense jungle and carefully looked at the situation on the mountain. He could not be sure whether the evil cultivator who committed the crime had left. If he rushed in rashly and bumped into the evil cultivator, the consequences would be disastrous. Facts have proved that this approach is wise. In the second half of the night, a cultivator in a dark red robe flew directly from the top of the mountain. Although the distance was far, he could still feel the fierce and violent aura on his body, which made people shudder. Zhou Daocheng was relieved until he finally disappeared in the vast mountains. At the same time, he was secretly shocked. The cultivator who could fly in the air must be a foundation-building strongman at least. Fortunately, he did not approach rashly. Even so, Zhou Daocheng waited until the early morning. After dawn, he explored many times to make sure that there was no one, and then he entered carefully. The scene inside was even more horrifying. Only some of the bodies of the elderly were left, staring at their homes with their eyes wide open, but the bodies of the more spiritual men, women and children had all disappeared. A lot of blood was flowing, and even the spiritual energy in the air was mixed with a touch of red. What a cruel method! Even ordinary mortals were slaughtered, it's simply insane. Zhao Yunji looked at all this with a gloomy face, and felt a sense of oppression in her chest. Zhou Daocheng was not much better. His feet stepped on the blood-soaked stone slabs, making a click, click sound. Arriving at the top of the mountain, this is the residence of the immortal cultivators, and there is no one left. Zhou Daocheng said, "Go in and see if there is anything left. After all, it is a family, and the evil cultivators will not be too careful even if they search." With that, the two walked into the interior of the temple and searched the warehouse for storing cultivation resources. Among them, the Sutra pavilion had been completely destroyed, and the fire burned all the scrolls, but after a long search, Zhou Daocheng found a jade slip of higher quality. This is a set of magic spells of first-class quality, called Quicksand Spell, which can turn the soil in a nearby area into quicksand and reduce the enemy's movement speed. Powerful spells are rare, not to mention that it is a first-class spell that can be practiced by chi-refining cultivators. Zhou Daocheng naturally accepted it without hesitation. In the warehouse where cultivation resources are stored, most of the precious items have been taken away, and there is no spiritual stone left. Only some ordinary resources are scattered on the ground. Among them, there are a lot of first-class low-quality spiritual rice, a large number of first-class monster materials, and some of the most common elixirs and talismans. The value is not high, adding up to about 500 spiritual stones at most. Zhou Daocheng has a lot of storage bags, and he is too lazy to pick and choose. He collected them all at once. Taking them back will always be useful. Apart from these two places, the two did not find any other valuable items. After thinking for a while, Zhou Daocheng came to the top of the mountain near the spiritual vein. If there is a place where important materials are most likely to be stored, it must be near the spiritual vein. For example, the Zhou family dug out a special storage room in the hilltop where the spiritual spring is located to store the most important cultivation resources, which can be nourished by the rich spiritual energy to maintain the quality of the resources. The same is true for underground caves. All construction is around the spiritual spring. Zhou Daocheng carefully looked at the surrounding environment, looking for places where there might be secret rooms, but unfortunately there was no harvest. Zhao Yunji speculated. After all, this is a chi-refining family. The resources are not as rich as the Zhou family. Perhaps they will not deliberately build such a storage room, just like my Zhao family. Zhou Daocheng didn't care and asked back, your second uncle easily took out 5,000 spiritual stones. Where do you think these spiritual stones are hidden? This. Zhao Yunji thought about it and found that it made sense. Besides, your Zhao family has just moved here, and the facilities are not yet complete. You know to store property separately, not to mention the power that has been developed for many years. As he spoke, he leaned down to observe the ground. After that, after roughly determining the direction, Zhou Daocheng stepped on the ground with one foot, and then used the Wu Earth spiritual qi to cover the ground and explore the possible cavities inside. Soon, an area with echoes was determined, but it was far away from the ground and went deep into the bottom of the spiritual vein. After a simple investigation, Zhou Daocheng determined the entrance, which was the cliff below the top of the mountain, behind an extremely remote and tricky rock. If you don't check it carefully, you won't notice it at all. As the huge rocks here were lifted, the dark cave entrance appeared in front of you, and there was a faint light inside, which was the luminous stone embedded in the stone wall. I found the right place, Zhou Daocheng said with a little surprise, and he was very excited. This is a batch of the highest quality inventory in a family. Even if it is just a small qi refining family, the resources accumulated over the years should not be underestimated. That is, the evil cultivators are inexperienced, otherwise they would never miss such a benefit. Zhou Daocheng's eyes were filled with joy, but he was still very careful. He attached the Wu Earth spiritual qi to the passage and explored the situation ahead to ensure that there was no hidden danger. But he was indeed overthinking. In such a hidden place, even few people in the family knew about the secret warehouse, and there were not many traps set up. He walked smoothly all the way to the deepest part, and a room of not too large area appeared. There were a lot of luminous stones inlaid on the top of the head, illuminating this area. Zhou Daocheng's heart couldn't help but beat after just one look. He didn't need to calculate carefully to know that there was definitely a lot of wealth here. In the corner, there are two exquisite boxes. When someone opens them, an extremely rich spiritual energy rushes to the face, and neatly arranged spiritual stones come into view, which makes the two people stunned for a while. Zhou Daocheng made a rough calculation and found that one box contained about 3,000 low-grade spiritual stones, and two boxes contained a full 6,000. This may be all the spiritual stones stored in this small family. What is even more exciting is that there are more than a dozen medium-grade spiritual stones, which emit a deeper light and have a richer spiritual energy. One medium-grade spiritual stone is worth 100 low-grade spiritual stones, but the actual value will be higher, because some high-level formations require high-quality spiritual stones to activate. Or spiritual boats, puppets, special magic tools, etc., most of which require high-quality spiritual stones with higher quality and more concentrated spiritual energy. In addition to spiritual stones, there are also many cultivation resources stored here, with various attributes. Although the quality is not particularly high, it is worth a lot of money. Among them, Zhou Daocheng found the earth-attributed natural treasures he needed, such as earth essence grass and earth spirit fruit, which could be used to assist in cultivation. However, he was not willing to buy them because he was short of money. Unfortunately, no second-level materials were found here, and most of them were common items on the market. Zhou Daocheng was not polite and stuffed them all into the storage bag. The value of these materials alone exceeded 1,000 spirit stones. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.